On the dusty road, two children, one big and one small, walked slowly. Next to them is an empty field, with only a few trees, standing alone. Most of the bark has been stripped, so that the hungry people can use it to satisfy their hunger. When spring begins, these trees will not sprout again. There is not a lot of weeds on the ground. There is nothing to eat. The boy moved hard step by step, and every step he took, he had to pay a huge price. Suddenly, he seemed to step on something under his feet, and he slipped and fell to the ground. The little guy behind him was terrified and squatted down hurriedly, pulling the boy's arm hard, trying to pull him up. Don't bother. The young man's voice was weak and his breath was dying. He asked the little guy to come in front of him. Mu Ying, I am not going to be. You go east, go to his who. As long as you have a breath, don't stop. Maybe there is a way to survive. After the boy finished speaking, his eyes turned black and he fainted unexpectedly. Didn't know how long it took, he opened his eyes and found that the little guy was still lying beside him, with eyes staring at him. Seeing that he was awake, Mu Ying laughed with joy, even though there were still tears on her face. The boy is full of helplessness. Silly boy, you guard me, don't you die with me. Mu Ying, listen carefully, hurry up and go. I met a noble person. You can still live. The child didn't move, just staring at the boy. Silly. Why are you not obedient? You can save me if you live. The young man urged heartily. This time the child seemed to understand. He got up with difficulty, staring at the young man, and finally took a step forward. It was just that he took 2 steps out and had to look back. Stunned and ran forward. Mu Ying left, there was only one young man left, and waves of fainting came, and there seemed to be the sound of wolf howling in the distance, and his life might not last long. What parents hate, what destroys the Yuan dynasty, don't even think about it. Their family belonged to the wormwood in the troubled times, and they died silently. I hope that kid is Lao Zhu's godson Mu Ying. I hope he can kill a few more officers and soldiers, and it is a revenge for their family. Tears flowed down from the corner of the boy's eyes. His name is Zhang Zimen, from Jinan. The family is also regarded as a famous family. The uncle's name is Zhang Yang Hao. He is not only a big official, but also a great sanqua master. Both the officialdom and the literary world are quite prestigious. It's just that it happened more than 10 years ago. Zhang Zimen's father did not participate in the imperial examination as an official. But since the 11th year of Zhe's Hung, the Red Turban Army has risen on both sides of the Yellow River, the Imperial Army has suppressed bandits, and the Red Turban Army has attacked and killed everywhere. Daddy Zhang thought twice and decided to go south to seek refuge with relatives, but Daddy Zhang, who has been studying at home for many years, knows the sinister outside. It didn't take long to go, and they encountered government blackmail, and again, they were less and less soft. There was only one servant left. What's more terrible is that his son Zhang Zimen got sick and vomited and diarrhea. The Zhang family looked at their son's sallow face and was getting thinner, and they felt more distressed. I want to return to my hometown now, but I can't do it anymore. I have to bite the bullet and go forward. They walked into the wilderness on this day. Zhang Zimen's condition suddenly worsened, he even convulsed, foamed at the mouth, and Zhang's husband and wife were anxious. Master, you and your wife are guarding the young master. I'll go ask the doctor and buy some medicine. Father Zhang frowned. Where are you going to find a doctor in this wild country? The servant said, when I just came over, I seem to have seen a village. Let me try it. Father Zhang muttered, can you do it right? Should I go too? The servant hurriedly waved his hands, Madam can't take care of the young master by herself. Don't worry, the master will come back when you go. Daddy Zhang nodded, and the servant hurriedly ran away with his pouting. It took him more than an hour to leave. Seeing that the sky was dim, he still did not return. What's the matter? What's the matter with Lao Wang? Isn't this anxious? Father Zhang was complaining when he suddenly found that his wife's face was pale, her lips trembled involuntarily, her body shook, and she almost fell. Are you sick too? Father Zhang was so frightened that he quickly helped his wife. Don't scare me. Mrs. was taken aback for a while, and suddenly burst into tears. It's over, my bag of jewelry is gone. Father Zhang was shocked. They had no money on them. The only thing that was worthwhile was the soft jewelry that the wife carried with her. It was her dowry, and there was a small baggage to keep. It must have been stolen by that mean and unwilling thief while I was thinking of my son. The lady was almost fainted with anger. Papa Zhang was taken aback for a moment, and he understood what was going on. Pharaoh must have taken the jewelry and ran away with the doctor on the excuse. What a damn! His family has been working in the Zhang family for 3 generations, and he has never treated him wrongly. At this time, he stole the jewelry and ran away. Daddy Zhang stomped his feet with anger, turned and left. Master, you can't catch up. Madam exclaimed. Father Zhang snorted, who is going to chase him? I'm going to find some medicinal materials for my son. I have also read medical books, yes, it can do it. After saying that, he ran away and ran down to the nearby mountain. An old scholar, can he understand medicine? Don't underestimate people. If you don't be good, you will be a good doctor. If you can't heal the country, you will go to the people. Many medical experts must be scholars. After reading the book, you will naturally understand the pharmacology. It's just that Mr. Zhang is still very far away from the famous doctor. In normal times, he definitely won't mess around, but at this point, he has no choice but to use a dead horse as a living horse doctor. He ran out for almost 2 hours, and when it was dark, he was out of breath and came back with some herbs. Quickly, boil water for my son to drink. Madam didn't know if it would be useful, so she could just boil the water on the fire according to her husband's instructions. When the flames rose, the husband discovered that the husband's cheeks and arms had broken wounds, blood oozing out, and dark red scabs formed. Madam looked in her eyes, her nose was sour, she couldn't help crying. Although their family is not rich and wealthy, it is also a middle-class family. There are servants to take care of them. How could they have suffered this kind of crime? I'm okay, don't care. As long as our son is okay, it's my incompetence as a father and hurt him. Father Zhang looked at his son's haggard face and couldn't help but stretch out his hand and touched it with pity. Touch his son's forehead. Very coincidentally, Zhang Zimen slowly opened his eyes in a coma, but his eyes were blurred, and he was surprised and confused. Father Zhang didn't notice the abnormality. He only treated his son as he slowed down and said proudly, "Look, my medicine will work." Madam couldn't help laughing and cursing, "I'm fainted, haven't drunk it yet." Daddy Zhang replied, "Then it was God's gratitude to our father and son that we were kind and filial, so that my son woke up. He must be fine." Father Zhang excitedly took off the clay pot, cushioned it with his sleeve, poured it into a bowl of drinking water, waited for it to cool a little, brought it to his son's mouth, and poured it down. The boy drank the medicine like a wood, and the bitter taste filled his body, and he couldn't help but shook his spirit. As if returning to his soul, he raised his head and looked at the 2 people in front of him, who were also looking at him with concern. They are their own parents. How come? Zhang Zimen has a headache, is he an orphan? How can there be parents? Suddenly, the memory in his brain exploded, the tide was surging, and the boy's expression could not help but change again and again. He should have arrived in a strange time and space. After sorting out the memory again, Zhang Zimen suddenly became uneasy. To the 12th year of Zhengzheng, Henan-Jiangbei Province, Anfeng Road, Red Turban Army. Stone Man One-Eye, provoked the Yellow River world to rebel. It's dying. If he didn't guess wrong, he reached the end of the Yuan dynasty. After all, the Oneid man is too deeply rooted in the hearts of the people, and it is simply a classic template for rebellion. How could this be? He is an ordinary college student, a kind of Buddhism. His biggest ambition is to take a civil service exam and serve the people honestly. That's all. Pushed him into the chaos of the end of Yuan dynasty. How can he live? And it is obvious that their family is in bad condition, they are on the run. Jiang Zemin took a peek. His father, obviously, is not so reliable, otherwise, how could he bring the family to a desperate situation? But what can he do? He is young and sick. His only hope is his father. I hope he can find a way to survive. Jiang Zemin was exhausted at this time, unable to think at all. Perhaps it was the old man's herbal medicine that had the effect, and he fell asleep soon. One night later, Jiang Zemin felt a lot more comfortable, but his father was in trouble. We don't have anything left. Going to Jiangnan is not going to happen. The nearest one is Huzhu, but I heard that Huzhu was caught by the red scarf. The thief has taken it. I'm afraid it won't end well if it goes. Madame had no idea. She lowered her head and became sad again. If she is more careful, and the bag of jewelry is not lost, there is still some way to do it. Jiang Zemin leaned against the carriage, and when he heard his father's words, his heart suddenly moved. Huzhu, isn't that the place where Lao Zhu made his fortune? Go to Huzhu and go to Zhu Yuanzhang. But how do you tell Dad? Did you tell him that the future Emperor Hung Guo is in Huzhu? Hurry over, maybe he can still be a Konglong hero, and in the future he will get a gold medal to avoid death. Jiang Zemin thought for a long time before whispering, this world, official regardless of the bandits, the red turbans may not be blue-faced and fangs, they may be more reasonable than the government. This sentence reminds Dad, is there not enough knowledge along the way? He had already seen through the virtues of the government. He doesn't know what the Red Scarf Army is like, but is there any other choice for the family? Gambled. Father Jiang gritted his teeth. Yes, I'll go to Huzhu, it's important to find a way to survive. The old man made up his mind and the family of three left immediately. The mother took care of Jiang Zemin in the carriage, and the old man took over from the old Wang and drove the car himself. Not far after they came out, the father suddenly stopped the carriage. Jiang Zemin couldn't help but was taken aback. Could it be any accident? He heard the sobbing cry. It turned out that there was a woman's corpse on the side of the road, and a child was lying on the corpse. He made the cry. The old lady poked her head out, and in her eyes, there was a wave of sympathy, but now they can't take care of themselves, where can they help others? Master, let's go. Father Jiang drove the carriage forward subconsciously, but his eyes were always fixed on the child, and his heart moved. The moment the child disappeared from site www.mtlnovel.com, the old man slammed the horse, and resolutely jumped off the cowl. Master! Madam whispered. Father Jiang sighed, I have read books for decades, if only the world is dim, I will not be saved. Wouldn't the sages and sages be read for nothing? Zemin Wu'er, when your uncle went to Shaanxi to help the victims, he was all the way to rescue the famine. When he encountered food shortages, he would bury the dead body. We Jiang family, at any time, can't just care about ourselves and die. After instructing his son, Dad Jiang passed by. Jiang Zemin in the carriage was slightly startled. Scholar, maybe, Dad is the kind of fool who always has good intentions, but it is the insistence of this kind of fool. This ritual is bad and happy, and the world is collapsed, and there is such a human touch that it will not be reduced to the of ABI. Jiang Zemin felt for the first time that this old man still had merit. He could not move, so my old lady went down to help. After half an hour, the couple came back, and there was another child behind him. I just asked his name. My child is Mu Ying. My parents are gone. Let's follow us from now on. The old lady told Jiang Zemin. Mu Ying. Zhang Zimen couldn't help but frown. How come you have the same name as Muying, the father of Qiangguo who has guarded Yunnan for generations? Moreover, the age should be about the same in years, but it's a pity that they are not Zhu Yuanzhang and Queen Ma. Maybe this kid just doubled his name. Of course, if you get to Huzhu smoothly and meet Lao Zhu, Zhang Zimen will not refuse if he is willing to accept this Muying. A joke, if it comes true, this kid will be the country's father who has guarded Yunnan for generations. Wouldn't he go to Yunnan to have fungus soup with him? Thinking of this, Zhang Zimen finally burned a little hope, with a smile on his face, and everything would be safe. Xiao Muying had just lost her mother and was crying sadly again. Soon she lay down on the carriage and fell asleep. Zhang mother covered a piece of clothing on Muying's body. The carriage continued to move forward. It was not until the afternoon that Muying woke up. At this time, Zhang Zimen held a quarter of a cake and delivered it to his mouth. Get hungry, eat some. Muying did not dare to answer, but raised her head and looked at Zhang Zimen and Zhang's mother next to her nervously. The eye circles of Mother Zhang looked red. How long has their family been so embarrassed? Don't be afraid, this is yours, we big guys have them, we have them all. That's right, this is the last cake on the car. It was divided into 4 equal parts, one for each person. Since we are together, we are a family. We have to cook a grain of rice into porridge and eat it separately. This is our family's rule. Father's words came from outside the car. Thank you, thank you. The little guy tremblingly took it, looking stupidly, as if there was nothing wrong with the baby, but he couldn't bear to say anything. But it was so fragrant that it caused him to slobber. Suddenly, the little guy bit down suddenly, chewed, and a happy smile appeared on his little cheek. The carriage is still on the move, and Father Zhang encourages them from time to time. There is nothing to be afraid of. He has been reading books for so many years. As long as you have a place to stay, you can live even if you set up a stall, write letters on your behalf, and measure words and divinations. As long as this scholar is not decent, there is no reason why he can't live. The words of the old man made the lady in the carriage both funny and wanting to cry. This was actually said from the husband's mouth? Don't you often recite the righteous song of Prime Minister Wen? Don't you often say you don't buckle for 5 buckets of rice? Where is your pride? I want to laugh, but feel sad. Daddy Zhang seems to have guessed it. Madam, are you going to laugh at me? Tell you, I haven't changed. We are going to Huzhu, not Yuanting. If the leader of the Red Scarf Army is really a talented man, I will assist me. Maybe he can still make the story of Emperor Han Jiaozu and Xiao He. MRS. Really laughed out loud, so thick-skinned, don't think about good things, just be safe and sound. Zhang Zimen didn't dare to laugh, but he discovered a little bit of his father's strengths, making fun in hardship, at least not pedantic. It seems that there are not many civil servants under Lao Zhu. As long as he arrives in Huzhu safely, he will still have a chance in the future. The carriage was getting closer and closer to Huzhu, and Zhang Zimen's mind became more and more vivid. But at this moment, a group of soldiers suddenly appeared not far away. They escorted the looted property and food back to the camp. There are heads tied to the horsehair of some people. There are old and young, male and female, which seem to be triumphant. It's just that they only know whether it is good or not. Seeing this scene, old Zhang suddenly lost his soul. He quickly turned the carriage, and quickly escaped from the gang of plague gods and evil spirits. But when Father Zhang was about to escape, Yuan Bing seemed to have spotted them, and even separated 2 horses and chased them towards the carriage. The 2 Yuan soldiers raised their weapons high and made strange noises, as if they had seen the prey beasts. Not good. Dad hurried to the car and fled. Zhang Zimen and my mother in the car were also terrified. What should I do? At this moment, Daddy Zhang also has a numbscalp and his hair is standing upright. Looking back, Yuan Bing has been getting closer and closer. How could his broken carriage run past others? Is their family going to die? Father Zhang was anxious, and found a trench on the side of the road, a few willow trees and a clump of dead grass on the side of the ditch. There is a way. Father Zhang stopped the carriage, he turned his head and stretched out his hand, grabbing Zhang Zimen's arm, "Get off the car." The old lady helped him and got Zhang Zimen out of the carriage. As for Mu Ying, the little guy was very flexible and followed. He closed his lips tightly, his small eyes rolled around, and Yuan Bing was getting closer and closer. "You quickly take them and hide inside." Mother Zhang was taken aback. "Master, how about you? Don't worry about me." Father Zhang only said this, and then jumped on the cowl again, waved the whip lifelessly. The old horse ran wildly with pain. Yuan Bing saw the carriage and chased it down. Mother Zhang was startled at first. Why didn't she understand that her husband was using his life to protect them? 2 decades of husband and wife, the husband is her heaven and everything to her, but now the husband wants to do nothing for her and his son. Mother Zhang couldn't wait to die with her husband, but her son was still with her, and her liver was torn in two. At this moment, Zhang Zimen's face was pale, and his eyes were burning with anger. He knew that the soldiers were cruel, but when the butcher knife fell on his family, the anger was really indescribable. But at this time, he even had difficulty walking, and he fell in a gust of wind, so what can he do? Mother pulled Zhang Zimen and ran into the bushes. She looked to both sides. Fortunately, there were some dead grass and leaves that could cover her body. She didn't care about anything, and grabbed with her hands. There was blood flowing out of her white fingers. She didn't seem to know it hurts. Like, Zhang Zimen and Mu Ying were covered. Just as Zhang's mother was trying to find a place to hide for herself, suddenly the sound of horseshoes approached from far away, and Zhang's mother was shocked again. Broke, the husband did not lead the group of beasts too far, they are back. With so many trees, where can 3 people be hidden? Husband is dead, is it impossible to let him die in vain? My son, my mother can't take care of you anymore, I have to live well. Mother Zhang stared at her son, as if to engrave his appearance in her heart, then rushed out of the grove with tears, and ran in the other direction resolutely go out. Zhang Zimen was stunned. Anyone who came from Taiping years, ever thought that a group of officers and soldiers dared to slaughter the people openly? The parents went to death one after another in order to save themselves. What kind of world is this? Zhang Zimen felt that he was about to explode. He was angry and sad. He didn't want the parents he had just acquired to lose like this. Mother, come back. Zhang Zimen wanted to stand up and stop his mother. Even if he died, he would die together. But he was too weak. He was only halfway up, and fell down when his eyes were dark. In a daze, Zhang Zimen heard the screams, and his mother was dead. In grief and anger, Zhang Zimen was completely unconscious. Mu Ying curled up beside him suddenly moved. He quickly covered Zhang Zimen's face with dead branches and fallen leaves. Still motionless, curled up next to Zhang Zimen, his movements are distressing. The night was cold, Zhang Zimen slowly woke up and was still alive. I don't know if Yuan Bing had been deceived, or was too lazy to search, anyhow he escaped. He gritted his teeth, tried his best, got up a little bit from the ground, and finally got up, but his body was still too weak and he was about to fall down again. At this time, a little guy hugged him, it was Mu Ying. Thanks a lot. Zhang Zimen and Mu Ying came out slowly, and after identifying the direction, Zhang Zimen went down. Not far away, a woman's body was lying sideways on the road. Is just Mother Zhang. Zhang Zimen's body shook, tears gushing out. After a long while, he turned his head and walked to the south. The distance was 3 times farther, and the old man's body was also there. Zhang Zimen couldn't help it anymore and cried out. Zhang Zimen wanted to bury the couple together, but he didn't even have the strength to drag the corpse, let alone dig a pit for burial. Jiang Zimen hated it to the extreme. If there is a chance, he wants to destroy Yuanting 100 times. Helpless Jiang Zimen and Mu Ying could only cover the corpses of their parents with branches, stones, and dirt separately, and Jiang Zimen solemnly bowed their heads in front of them. After all this, it is already dawn. Rising from the ground, Jiang Zimen and Mu Ying headed towards his hu. They were not sure how far they were, they just walked step by step. It was just that Jiang Zimen was already weak and difficult to move. After experiencing great grief, he was already unable to support it. Is going forward completely by the will to survive, one step, the empty abdomen, the emptiness and cramps, the cold wind, Jiang Zimen staggers. From morning to noon and to the afternoon, Jiang Zimen can't remember how many times he fell www.mtlnovel.com, but he got up every time and continued to walk forward. Just being alone has a limit after all. Jiang Zimen fell to the ground, losing the slightest strength. After driving away Mu Ying, Jiang Zimen passed out completely, just waiting for death to come. I don't know how long it took, when suddenly a carriage appeared on the road and was rushing towards it. There was a burly man sitting on the shaft of the car. He drove the car while searching anxiously. Suddenly, he noticed that there seemed to be something beside the road, and the man slowed down the carriage. At this time, a small head poked out of the carriage. Is Mu Ying? He actually came back. The little guy recognized Jiang Zimen, threw himself on him, shook it hard, and cried loudly. At this moment, another woman got out of the car. She also rushed over. Seeing Jiang Zimen's face turn sallow, like a dead person, her heart was also suspended. Kongba, is he still alive? The man grabbed Jiang Zimen's wrist and said, for a moment, there is still a pulse, but I don't know if I can save it. Mu Ying immediately stopped her grief, and looked at the couple pleadingly. The woman stretched out her hand and took Mu Ying in her arms, and then said to her husband, Kongba, today the winter solstice, let's come out to pay homage to our ancestors. I think that this incident is also the spirit of the in-laws in the sky, let us help. No matter what. No matter what. The man nodded, the girl said, we can save people. The man leaned over and picked up Jiang Zimen. The woman also hugged Mu Ying and got into the carriage together. Then he galloped east, and at dusk, he arrived outside Huzhu city. It's Mr. Zhu and Miss Zhu who are back, open the gate of the city soon. The soldier guarding the gate shouted excitedly. It turned out that the man was called Kongba, whose surname was Zhu. Jiang Zimen didn't know how long it took. When he opened his eyes again, he found that there was a little guy lying beside the pillow. It was Mu Ying, who was sleeping soundly, but with his small fists clenched tightly and sleeping unsteadily. Jiang Zimen looked around blankly. This is a clean and tidy room. Although there are no expensive furnishings, it is very warm and comfortable. He couldn't help closing his eyes. Is he saved? It seems that Mu Ying found someone and saved herself. The person that Mu Ying found. Jiang Zimen suddenly didn't dare to think about it. Didn't he really meet that man, right? At this moment, the door opened and a woman came in with a medicine bowl. Fortunately, isn't it? Jiang Zimen subconsciously breathed a sigh of relief, but the next second he raised his mind again. It's not Lao Zhu, can't it be his wife? Jiang Zimen glanced, and saw that she was wearing a simple black jacket with a pleated skirt underneath, which perfectly covered her feet. Not too old, but clean and tidy, with good looks and clear eyes. I don't know if it is because of the filter, Jiang Zimen actually thinks she has a kind of extravagance, so he just glanced at it, and quickly lowered his head for fear of offending. The woman is much more calm. Seeing Jiang Zimen wake up, she immediately smiled and said, is it better? Her voice is very nice, gentle, and kind. Many, thank you for your help. Jiang Zimen's voice was hoarse, and the woman motioned him not to speak yet, and put the medicine bowl to Jiang Zimen's mouth. When he finished drinking and moisturized his throat, the woman said in an orderly manner, "Not yet know how to call it. Is this kid your brother?" Jiang Zimen shook his head and said, "The kid is called Jiang Zimen, and his name is Mu Ying. We met by the water. We just supported each other and walked a long way." The woman put the medicine bowl aside, and said casually, "Really? But how did I hear that you helped him bury his mother?" Jiang Zimen was taken aback, and said in a low voice, "That was done by my father. He doesn't look at people suffering, but it happened." Jiang Zimen didn't deliberately grieve, but just mentioned his father, still making him feel hated. The woman also knew from Mu Ying that the couple was killed by the Yuan army. She was afraid that he would be sad, so she changed the subject and said, "Brother Jiang, what would you like to eat? Anything will do." The woman nodded, and after a short while, she gave Jiang Zimen a bowl of japonica rice porridge, fed him and drank it. With food in his stomach, Jiang Zimen's spirits improved. At this time the door opened, and a burly man walked in, with a bright red war jacket, clean and tidy, meticulous, and covered with iron armor. The face is square, the nose is straight, and the eyes are god. A full-fledged valiant man, a great man. It is no wonder that people can be admired and recruited as son-in-law. As for the big jaw that scares people to death, it doesn't exist. Zhu Kongba came in, and seeing Jiang Zimen wake up, he asked directly, "I haven't asked your hometown, how did you get to the boundary of who's who, can you tell us about it?" Jiang Zimen honestly said, "The kid's ancestral home is Jinan, my family name is Jiang, and I have an uncle, Mr. Yun Zhuang, named Jiang Yang Hao." Zhu Kongba couldn't help but be surprised, "We seem to have heard of this one, so you are still a scholar, official family? How come you have fallen to this point?" Returning to Ngong. "Ever since my uncle was in Shaanxi for disaster relief, my father-in-law decided to study behind closed doors, work in his family, and no longer serve as an official in Yuanting. However, my father wanted to escape the war and went to relatives and friends after the war broke out recently. In the end, he encountered an accident on the road and died in Yuan Dan's hands. Fortunately, Grace saved his life, otherwise the boy would become a dead bone on the side of the road." Zhu Kongba sighed, "That's a poor man, do you have any plans? Still relying on relatives and friends?" Jiang Zimen shook his head, and said in frustration, "Nowadays, wars are everywhere, and there are raging flames. Even if you have the intention, I'm afraid you can't." Zhu Zongba thought for a while, and said with relief, "Don't worry, since we have taken you in, you can live with peace of mind. When will you recover from the disease? Let's talk about it." He has something to do, so he got up and went to the marshal's mansion with a few words of comfort. When Zhu Kongba left, the woman suddenly noticed that Mu Ying, who had been asleep, was awake. The little guy was lying on the side of the bed, staring at Jiang Zimen with his head tilted, without speaking, but with a small grin. She liked this little boy very much, and couldn't help but praised, "Brother Jiang, Kongba and I went to sacrifice to our ancestors, and we happened to meet him. When we ran in front of us, we just kowtow. We want to take him back to the city. He will live and die. Promise, kneel and beg us, I must go to you. Fortunately, God bless us, let us meet. This kid is affectionate and righteous." Jiang Zimen knew what had happened, and the heat was surging in his heart. This little guy saved his life. And he believed that Mu Ying had no calculations, the little guy was just for his own good. Not a brother, but better than a brother, Jiang Zimen suddenly felt that his heart warmed a lot. He touched Mu Ying's head, thinking secretly, the two men's 9 achievements are Zhu Kongba and Queen Ma, since they also like it is better to strike the iron while it is hot, determine the relationship, and find a safe way out for the little guy. Jiang Zimen said seriously, "Madam, the boy and Mu Ying met. He saved the boy's life. The boy also hopes that he will have a safe place to go. Now that I am young and in poor health, I can't even take care of myself. I, I want to beg madam, yes, can accept him. This child is still young and has lost his parents a long time ago. Madam is merciful, let him give him another home. The woman was startled slightly, she was really tempted. Although Mu Ying was young, she knew that she was a good boy. Just accepts her son and wants her husband to be the master, she can't make her own way. Therefore, the woman said, Brother Zhang, no matter what, we won't care about it. You can recover from the illness first, and I'll talk to Kongba when you turn around. The woman once again mentioned her husband's name is Kongba. Zhang Zimen pressed her excitement, and asked, the kid still doesn't know the surname of Ngong. Your surname? His surname is Zhu, and my surname is Ma. They are all animals that are not allowed to rest at home. It's nothing expensive. Ma said casually, and he laughed. There were other things outside, so Ma also went out. It's confirmed now, it's really two people. More than 10 years later, they will become the two most distinguished people in the world. Mu Ying, this kid has made a lot of money. Zhang Zimen turned his head to look at Mu Ying. Who knew the little guy was actually angry? He rolled his eyes and puffed his cheeks, and asked angrily, you want to sell me, right? Zhang Zimen was stunned, what kind of brain circuit is this kid? I'm looking for a godfather for you, Pan Jiaji, why don't you know good people? Sell it. My sister was sold by my mother for 10 caddies of japonica rice. You need a few caddies more. The little guy lowered his head and muttered. Zhang Zimen was startled again, is life so worthless? He probed his hand and hugged Mu Ying. The little guy lay in his arms and listened to Zhang Zimen quietly. Stupid boy, I'm not selling you, I can't take care of you. Don't talk about taking care of you, I can't even take care of myself. We have to rely on my benefactor to save our lives, do you understand? Understood. Mu Ying thought for a while, and then suddenly said, then, let's sell it to Ngong, okay? I don't want to be separated from you. Zhang Zimen smiled wryly, how old are you? I am 8 years old. Zhang Zimen said, that's it, I'm almost 12, and you, my benefactor, accept their sons, but they also accept you at the most. How can they accept me? I just stay, do some chores, and run errands. Zhu Kongba is 25 this year, and Ma is only 20. It is indeed a bit reluctant to accept a teenage son. Mu Ying rolled her eyes and asked, well, isn't that a servant? Zhang Zimen smiled and said, who said no? Mu Ying rolled her eyes, suddenly sat upright, patted her chest abruptly, and said proudly, don't worry, this young master will protect you then. Zhang Zimen's face is dark, you little boy, you want to climb on top of my head before agreeing, so Zhang Zimen raised his slap in anger. You monkey, see if I won't open up your ass. Mu Ying begged for mercy, but she moved very quickly, pouting her to drill under the bed, but what was under the bed? When he poked out his small head from the other side, his black coal mouth, his face covered with dust, he instantly turned into a kid, making Zhang Zimen laugh, and Mu Ying wiped his face, adding 3 black fingerprints. Suddenly following the silly smile, the room was filled with a cheerful atmosphere. Zhang Zimen and Mu Ying were playing around, and it was rare to relax a lot, but they were still hanging in their hearts, for fear that because of their own mixing, Lao Zhu would not be willing to accept Mu Ying, which would ruin this kid's Lord's Highness, Yang Zhen Yunan. Duke Qianguo, the loss can be great. He really didn't guess wrong, one more person, it's really not that easy to handle. At night, Zhu Kongba came back. Ma said to her husband, although Zhang Zioj and Mu Ying are not brothers, they are here together. We can't just leave one and leave the other alone. But Zhang Zioj is a few years older than Mu Ying, and his age is not suitable. He comes from a famous family again, and he seems to be literate and hyphenated. Not to mention whether he wants to or not, we can't lose the morality and wait for Wen Xuxing slowly. Zhu Kongba frowned. What the wife said was natural. It's really difficult. If he is a few years older, let him do things for the marshal, but at this age, it's really difficult. Ma looked at her husband, and added, there is another layer in it. If you say that if he knows our identity and knows we are thieves, would he still be willing to stay? Zhu Zongba said strangely, he said, his father is unwilling to be an official in Yuanting. Ma couldn't help but blank his husband, then he is willing to be an anti-thief. After being asked for a word, Lao Zhu hesitated again. When he joined the army, he hesitated again and again. If he had nowhere to go, who would want to kill his life with his head? Not to mention the child of a scholar. From a psychological point of view, he hopes to have a helper who can read and hyphenate. There is a mess in the city. It is really impossible to rely on a group of big bosses. The melon that can be twisted is not sweet, so things can't be rushed. Don't worry about the mess, when he can run and jump, let's open the conversation and ask him what he thinks. Zhu Kongba simply said. Ma nodded, that's the only way to do that. Jiang Zimen didn't wait for Ma Shi's immediate reply, and it was difficult to follow up. He can only treat his illness wholeheartedly, and take medicine every day in addition to dry food. Although the thick black medicine soup is bitter, the body is getting more and more energetic. Even the doctor who came to see the pulse was surprised. Boy, your fortune-telling is back from the ghost gate. Jiang Zimen was curious, and wanted to find out what he needed, but the doctor didn't say anything, but told him that ginseng and donkey hide gelatin were used in it, and the rest were all top-notch products for warming qi and blood. Boy, these medicinal materials, if it weren't for Girl Ma's instructions, I really wouldn't be able to use your body. What can Jiang Zimen say? The grace of survival, we have to keep it in mind. 5 days later, Jiang Zimen was already able to walk around. The little guy Mu Ying is naturally the happiest. He is surrounded by Jiang Zimen, smiling and talking about Ma family. Although he has not officially accepted him, he almost regards Mu Ying as his son. He will give him new clothes and shoes, and put on his head. There is also an exquisite Tajriad hat, which is very cute. It seems that Mu Ying's Royal Highness has hope. Jiang Zimen is happy for Mu Ying, but he hasn't figured out how to gain a foothold. After Zhu Kongba and Ma clan married, they got a separate courtyard. How many people should drool when marrying a daughter-in-law and giving a house away? The couple lived in the main room, and Jiang Zimen lived in the east wing. In addition to the temporary ward, there was half of the room with a lot of books piled up, but it was a pity that no one came to look at it, and there was a layer of dust. Jiang Zimen believes that no matter what time it comes, it is good to read more and be an excellent writer. Of course, except for the Equatorial Guinea ruled by a few lunatics. He walked in and looked carefully. As an ordinary college student, miscellaneous books must be extensive, and they have inherited the memory in the body. It is not difficult to read these ancient books. Soon, Jiang Zimen got used to it. He spent all his free time reading books. When Ma noticed it, he told Jiang Zimen that all the books here belonged to him, just read it casually. Jiang Zimen is naturally happy. In this world, having a few books must be very precious. Therefore, Jiang Zimen looked through it while sorting it out, sorting them into categories according to Confucian classics, Enlightenment readings, poems and songs, etc., and put them all away. Just as he sorted out the books, he found that there was still a wooden box. What will it be? Is it gold and silver treasure? Jiang Zimen wanted to tell Ma, but Ma was not there and there was no lock on the box, so Jiang Zimen opened it. When I looked inside, Jiang Zimen was disappointed. It was just some calligraphy and painting. Now it is a chaotic world. Of course, the calligraphy and painting are not valuable. If you guessed it correctly, it should be the spoils of the Red Scarf Army after entering Who's Who. Some people want soft gold and silver, and no one cares about these spiritual food. Jiang Zimen flipped through it, and what appeared in front of him was a black ink painting. This painting was very blue, strong, and soft, and it was a good work. It's just that Jiang Zimen didn't understand ancient paintings, so he just looked at it casually. But when he saw the inscription, he couldn't help being shocked. It turned out to be him. This painter Jiang Zimen has been a man for 2 lifetimes, and I have heard of him. Let me talk about this life first. When Mr. Jiang was alive www.mtlnovel.com, he said many times and couldn't learn the Prime Minister, so he should learn Zheng Sixiao. The Prime Minister of Wen is naturally Wen Tianxiang. How can Zheng Sixiao and he be with his old man? It turned out that Zheng Sixiao was a student of the Southern Song Dynasty. After the Yuan dynasty defeated the Southern Song Dynasty, he determined not to be an official of the Yuan court, and whether he was sitting or lying down, he faced the south. Every winter solstice, he would go outside the city and cry south. The most puzzling thing is that Zheng Sixiao is good at painting orchids, but his orchids have no roots and no soil, and seem to appear out of thin air. If there are friends, they persuade Zheng Sixiao to paint on the soil to look good. But Zheng Sixiao asked back, the land was taken away by outsiders, don't you know? Zheng Sixiao's lifelong loyalty to the Song dynasty is evident. His Muron picture was lost in the hands of a stamped madman, and was later taken out of the palace by Xian Tong. The last time Jiang Zimen saw this painting, it was at the Osaka Municipal Art Museum in Waguni. Represents the loyal Melantu, but fell into the hands of a foreign country. The impact on Jiang Zimen at that time was huge, and that kind of resentment rushed to his face. After traveling, Jiang Zimen made up a lot of history. Now that I saw Melantu again, Jiang Zimen's mood can be imagined. He devoted himself to it, but he didn't even notice, and a person appeared behind him. Brother Jiang. The person here is Zhu Kongba. Jiang Zimen hurriedly charged the crime and said, it's the benefactor, the kid shouldn't have turned around, please forgive the sin. Zhu Kongba greatly waved his hand, no one can understand these calligraphy and paintings, just throw them away as rubbish. I see you are fascinated, do you understand these? Jiang Zimen was very humble, I just heard from my family, but I can't understand it. Zhu Kongba was just free, curiosity came up, and he smiled, then you can tell us, let us have a long experience. Zhu Kongba is purely curious, chatting casually, Jiang Zimen is just a child, what earth-shattering things can he say? But Jiang Zimen didn't think so. Lao Zhu asked himself, it was an interview with the boss, but it shouldn't be sloppy. You must use 200% of your skills. Do you know the old things about Song dynasty? Zhu Kongba honestly said, it was not clear in the past, but the Red Turban Army was going to reopen De Song's Hishan. I also inquired about it, but I don't know much. Jiang Zimen cheered up and smiled, my dear, I have a story. One day Song Huitsong took Prince Zhao Huan and King Kong Zhao Go to take a boat to Jinming Lake. As a result, a gust of wind came and the father and son fell into the water. The people in Bianjing heard that they were curious to ask who was saved. At this time, the Taixu side began to lively, and many scholars shouted in unison, tears raining, De Song is saved. Zhu Kongba frowned, and he was taken aback for a moment before he realized that he couldn't help but laugh, and said, you kid is really sarcastic, and the emperor's song is so unbearable. Jiang Zimen sternly said, Ngong, the great Song dynasty is not righteous, it was brought out of the mother's womb. Zhao Kuangyan and Chen Qiao mutiny, seized the world after the Zhou dynasty, bullied the orphans and widows, and occupied the country. The southern Song dynasty Emperor Jiaozong sat and watched the central plains fall, his father and brother were captured, no thinking of restoring the country, he killed Yu Fei, a famous anti-Jin warrior, self-destructed the Great Wall, bowed his knees and proclaimed himself a minister. How could such a monarch take the hero? 4 defeats in Mongolia, a miserable defeat all the way, so that the country fell, and China changed hands. It is so terrible that rivers and mountains have become Mongolian horse farms. Zhu Zhong nodded, Da Song really can't do it. I heard that I had complained about the killing of Prince Yu, and it was too angry. Now that the Red Scarf Army wants to restore the world of the Song Dynasty, should we restore such a thing? Jiang Zimen shook his head, Ngong, reopen the Great Song Dynasty, not to restore the Great Song Dynasty, but to overthrow the Yuan court. Not to mention the Great Song Dynasty, since the 3 generations of the Qin and Han dynasties, the Central Plains dynasty has been inherited continuously. Although there are 5 chaotic flowers in the middle, but there is still a corner in the south. Emperor Wen of the Sui dynasty, Yang Jian, is a descendant of Emperor Yang Zhen of the Han dynasty. He unified the 9 states and revived China. Only after Yashan, thousands of miles of rivers and mountains fell into the hands of the Mongols. The hearts of the people of the world were sad and indignant, and they were full of blood and tears. In addition, the Mongols are cruel and tyrannical, contempt for the southerners, and a life is not as valuable as livestock. How can people of insight not hate or resent? The reopening of the Song dynasty is intended to change the day and the day. At this point, Jiang Zimen stretched out his hand to unfold the Molan map. Please look at this orchid has no roots and leaves. The painter has said that the land has been taken away. He lives as a survivor and will never be an official of Yuan Ting. Zhu Kongba was shocked when he heard this. He couldn't help but leaned over and stared at the painting. He looked at the painting repeatedly, and then said, "This person is very handsome." After sighing, Zhu Kongba said again, "Let's listen to what you mean, reopening the Song dynasty is secondary, and taking the land back is true. What Lu Futong and the others say is nothing more than gathering people's hearts." Lao Zhu quickly grasped the point. Jiang Zimen nodded vigorously. They talked about the painting, talking about people, about the country, about the past. The more they talked about Zhu Kongba, the more excited they were. Sober. He wanted to let people talk to himself a long time ago, but he has never met a sensible person. Today, I got what I wanted. I got a lot of rewards. I chatted and forgot about dinner. Until Ma found it, Lao Zhu reluctantly stopped. When it was at the dinner table, Lao Zhu also told Ma, "In the past, we were like buckling in a big tank. Let the little brother Zhang say that. We suddenly opened up. It's really an insight." Ma Shi was also happy to listen. In the past, she was worried that Jiang Zimen's famous scholar would have a temper and could not get along with her husband. Now it seems that she is completely thinking about it. Ma smiled and gave Jiang Zimen a dish, and said, "It seems that I will inevitably have to trouble Ziyojzhang in the future." Jiang Zimen said a few polite words, and suddenly realized an opportunity. If he wants to stay by Zhu Kongba's side, he must have enough value. After all, no one wants to raise a person to eat rice. Therefore, Jiang Zimen deliberately said, "Gong Gong, just listening to the kid does not necessarily have any gains. If Ian Gong is willing to learn, or to study from scratch for enlightenment." Zhu Zongba felt a little bit, but it was a pity. "We went to private schools when we were young, but the family was poor. After only 2 months of studying, my eldest brother was going to get married, so he took the money as a gift." Later in Huangzhou, the temple looked through the Buddhist scriptures and recognized a few words. "We also want to read, but no one wants to teach us." At this moment, Ma couldn't help but smile. "This is not ready-made? Just ask Zhang Zioj to teach you." Zhu Zongbei was startled. This kid seemed to have no other problems except his youth. He stood up suddenly and bowed deeply at Jiang Zimen. "Sir, would you like to teach us?" Lao Zhu's utterly shocked Jiang Zimen. He quickly said, "My benefactor is willing to learn, so the kid will do my best, but my knowledge is not high, and my goodness is really a blessing to the kid. You don't need to be polite, say if you want to dig your heart out, this boy is saved by grace, and the boy is worried and doesn't know how to repay it." Jiang Zimen said so truthfully, Zhu Kongba and Ma Clan were both happy. Zhu Zhongate said, "Sister," the little gentleman agreed, "you can get 2 more dishes, and another pot of wine, you can't neglect the little gentleman anyway." While Ma was preparing, Zhu Kongba smiled and said, "Maybe the little man has guessed that we are the red scarf of his who. Over the years, we have died of our parents, brothers, nephews. Desperate, we hate this court." Jiang Zimen nodded, and sighed, "Benevolence, isn't the kid a hatred of family and the country?" Zhu Chongbei was stunned, and immediately thought that Jiang Zimen's father and mother had just died in the hands of the officers and soldiers. The situation of both of them was miserable. Lao Zhu looked at Jiang Zimen and got closer. "Little sir, we are not so sure in our hearts. Right now the court still has 1,000,000 troops. The situation of the Red Scarf rebels is not good. A few months ago, the Sesame Li in Zhuzhou was wiped out, only Pengda and Zhao both ran to Huzhu with their bare buttocks. Not long ago, news came that Wang San of Baijuo Red Scarf was also dead. I'm really afraid that if we don't see the day of revenge and hatred, our heads will fall to the ground. It is indeed the hardest time for the Red Turban Army, and Zhu Kongba is not to blame for worrying." Jiang Zimen immediately straightened his waist and encouraged, "The kid doesn't understand the situation of the war. But the father said that Hu Lu has no national fate for a century, and the Yuan court has been established for almost 100 years. The monarch is mediocre, the officials are greedy, and the people are boring. Coupled with the continuous natural disasters and the flooding of the Yellow River, the Yuanting has reached the end of the world, but now Yuanting's deeds will only force more people to become homeless, become refugees, and join the Red Scarf. In the long run, the Yuanting will lose. The Red Scarf will win. It's just that the road will be more tortuous." Zhu Kongba is a shock again. This makes sense. People like him who didn't want to rebel, had no choice but to take up swords and guns. Thousands of people thought about Yuanting's destruction. Even if they were gods, they couldn't get back to heaven. Zhu Kongba suddenly felt that Jiang Zimen was a rare talent, and it was a bit wasteful to keep enlightenment for himself. "Mister, you know how to hyphenate, you can speak, and you have insight. Here, you are really wronged. When you get better, I recommend you to see the boss. We guarantee that the boss will reuse you." "Handsome? Guo Zixing?" Jiang Zimen had no interest at all. After talking to Lao Zhu, he was absolutely sure that this was the future Hongguo Great Emperor Zhu Yuanzhang. In the end of Yuan Dynasty, unless he directly killed Lao Zhu with a sniper rifle, it would be regarded as those who pass through may not have done it well. Without him, relying on Lao Zhu's fierce energy to completely divide the land with the local tyrants, it would be a dead end for the Traverser. Jiang Zimen is less than 12 years old, and he is a sick child. He doesn't think he has the ability to do it alone. In this case, holding Lao Zhu's thigh, it couldn't be more suitable. Many people mentioned Lao Zhu, and they have a stereotype that Lao Zhu likes to kill heroes, and he will not end well with Lao Zhu. Not to mention Su Dai, Tang He, who died of life, and even took a break with the country. Should those heroes who have corrupted the law and acted wickedly should be confessed? Can they not die just because they developed the state power? Lao Zhu is an emperor who has risen from the bottom. He is completely different from the emperor who has won the world with the support of nobles. He has a deep hatred of corruption and has a very low tolerance for corruption. He is naturally not polite. In another dynasty, heroes do not greedy power but only earn money. Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com may still be the way to save lives, but I'm sorry, Lao Zhu is different. Then again, as long as there is no corruption and no power, you can still live very securely. Li Shanchong was killed. Although he returned to his hometown, he was unwilling to be lonely. He remotely controlled the government. As for the Blue Jade, he was domineering, and it was a way to kill him. Of course, it does not mean that there are no unjust cases, such as Song Qaogong Feng Sheng, such as Ying Qaogong Fu Yude. But for Jiang Zemin, he still has a choice. The big deal is to follow Mu Ying to Yunnan. The 4 seasons are like spring. Elephants, peacocks, don't be too beautiful in small days. What's more, right now Zhu Kongba had just joined the army and returned to Guo Zixing's subordinates. He didn't do it alone, then you might as well set an unrealistic goal for yourself and change Lao Zhu a little bit to make Daming's foundation more reliable. Anyway, there are still more than 10 years before the founding of Daming, and it is not yet a turn to think about what will happen in a few decades. While Jiang Zemin was thinking, Zhu Kongba looked at him, wondering in his heart, could this kid look down on the handsome man? Unwilling to play for the red scarf? Perhaps, after all, he is a home for reading, even if he has an antagonism with Yuan Ting, he is not willing to be a thief, which ruined his reputation. While Zhu Kongba was pondering, Jiang Zemin bowed and solemnly said, "My benefactor, the boy is young, weak, and knowledgeable. When you get to the marshal, you will only be bad. If the benefactor does not dislike him, let the boy follow the grace. Gong, let's play for the benefactor." Zhu Zhong frowned and frowned, which was really funny. He didn't want to follow the commander, but he was willing to follow himself. "Mister, we are just a mere 9 chiefs now, do you think so much about us?" Zhu Kongba quietly changed his name. Jiang Zemin nodded vigorously, met Zhu Kongba's gaze, and smiled, "How about the Emperor Han? It's just a pavilion." "Pavilion Long. Chief 9. Seems to be pretty much the same." "No, isn't the point of this remark implying that he will have the Emperor's fate?" Zhu Kongba was scared. What kind of thing is he? A little monk who is a monk, a beggar who begs for food. I don't know how far this identity is from the Emperor. It is true that the toad eats swan meat. After Zhu Kongba was shocked, there was still a hint of imagination. When Ma came up with a new wine and food, and called twice, Zhu Kongba woke up. He nodded in disbelief, his expression was a little unnatural. "Little sir, if you can afford it, you can stay. We also have the guidance of a famous teacher, so I must ask more." Finally stayed, this big thick leg can be regarded as hug. Jiang Zemin was still not so satisfied. He had to take an inch of it and said, "My benefactor asks the kid to teach, and you have to have books. The books and documents in this yard are all under my control." Zhu Kongba couldn't help being funny. There were only a few seized books that no one was reading, no official documents. Maybe this kid still doesn't know how old the 9 master is? Old Zhu laughed loudly, "Sure, here, as long as it contains words, it is yours." "Okay, this is what you said. Don't regret it." Is in charge of an ordinary landlord businessman, at most the accountant housekeeper, who is worthless. Can manage writing for a party of princes, that is, Ji Du is in charge of the secretary. Feng Dao and Zhao Piyu both did it. At the level of the emperor, he is in charge of the prime minister of a country, not to mention the palm of the ceremonial supervisor. Jiang Zemin has almost seen his upgrade path, and this small day is more and more hopeful. In history, Li Shanchong did this work for Lao Zhu. When it comes to rewarding meritorious service, he ranks above Suda and ranks first in the founding of the country. Of course Jiang Zemin didn't have so many extravagances, and what he wanted so much credit to do. It would be enough to be able to be like Mu Ying, after establishing the country, guarding one side and becoming a stable Earth Emperor. But when you think about it carefully, it seems that the entire Ming Dynasty is also the Duke of Qianguo in Yunnan. I want one more, it's not that difficult. Jiang Zemin cheered up. He asked Ma to ask for pen, ink, paper, and inkstone. After all, he came from a scholar, and his muscle memory made it easy for Jiang Zemin to master the writing. Although the writing is not very good, but I can barely read it. After a few days of sleeplessness, he finally took a thick pile of dozens of them, and handed it to Zhu Kongba during dinner. Not too much. Zhu Chong took it over with joy. Jiang Zemin also smiled and said, "It's not much, it's just a catalog after all. The kid also listed some books at the back. It's best to buy them as soon as possible. It has been delayed for a long time. We must recover the lost time. Jiang Zimen smiled brightly, as if looking at the prey that was thrown into the net. Old Zhu's face turned black immediately. What are you chasing after? Chasing fate? The ma next to couldn't help but laugh, but he was still persuasively, the little gentleman is right, he is 8th, you have to study hard. Otherwise, I will stop and persuade her husband. Lao Zhu was taken aback again. What could he say? Look, you don't even know the virtue of shuttle. Chang 8, you really have to work hard. Ma Shi laughed. Zhu Kongba's face was suffocated, flushed with suffocation, speechless, but with the heart to go to the grave, he said, good girl, we know. From this day on, the teacher Jiang Zimen has been on duty. Since Zhu Kongba had to work as a errand in the handsome mansion, he could only read and read when he was free sooner or later. Jiang Zimen didn't care about the gradual progress. In the morning, he read 300,001 kind of Mongolian books, learned to write, and went back to see the Confucian classics in the evening to explain the history. Putting it in any school is a nonsense behavior. It is equivalent to taking the kindergarten and graduate courses together, changing to an ordinary person, and it is not crazy. But it is obvious that Lao Zhu is not an ordinary person, he held on. Jiang Zimen is not an ordinary person, he actually made a few slap-sized manuscripts, put Zhu Kongba in his sleeve, took time to look at it during the day, and tested it when he came back at night, absolutely not letting go of any time. If you don't want to be crazy, you won't survive, how can you refuse to endure hardship? Jiang Zimen tried his best to teach, and old Zhu worked hard to learn, the two of them are still more vigorous. Time keeps moving forward, and there are only a few days before the new year. Zhu Kongba, who has failed to harvest, thinks of respecting teachers and teaching, so he proposed, Mr. Seeing the new, it's a little bit of our heart. Jiang Zimen didn't even go out. When Lao Zhu said so, he was still thinking about moving and nodded. Zhu Zongba went to Ma Clan with joy, no matter who it was, his wife would inevitably take care of the money. When Zhu Kongba came back, Jiang Zimen found that he was holding a large handful of banknotes in his hand, and he slapped it in his arms at will, his chest bulged. How much is this? Why does it look so casual? Jiang Zimen rolled his eyes, and he finally remembered that this was probably the treasure of the Yuan dynasty. Although the treasure banknotes were stable for decades after the founding of the Yuan dynasty, the financial collapse later caused the banknotes to be issued indiscriminately, and the treasure banknotes became less and less valuable. The two main reasons for the Red Turban Army's rebellion, one is to open the river, and the other is to change money, which shows the power of this thing. The common people are complaining, but the Red Turban Army has no time to launch a new currency, so they can barely continue to use it. Jiang Zimen came out with Zhu Kongba. The market in Huzhu was not lively and the goods were scarce. He simply bought a new suit and bought some bacon and maltose. Jiang Zimen has no expectations for the new year, but Zhu Kongba is different. He is still looking for it. After all, this is the first year after he married his wife, and it is also the first year that his life has improved. But at this moment, a horse suddenly came, rushed to the front, and a burly man jumped from above. Heavy 8. Jiang Zimen turned his head to look. He didn't know this person. Zhu Zhong smiled and said, he is our good brother, named Tang He. Now he is 1,000 households in the city, and the official is older than us. Although Zhu Kongba said so, he didn't mean to see the chief at all. There was nothing wrong with Tang He. He believed that it would not be long before he climbed on top of himself. That was a matter of course. Someone is coming. Who? It's Jialu's messenger. What is the name of Lu Anmin, the Jinchi who went out of Huaxi? What is he doing? Zhu Kongba asked, frowning. That's not to mention, naturally it is to persuade you to surrender. The officers and soldiers are on the move. Zhu Kongba frowned. He chatted with Jiang Zimen a few days ago and revealed his worries about the future. After talking with Jiang Zimen, he has confidence, but the others in the city may not. Little sir, I'm afraid we are going to the handsome mansion. Jiang Zimen nodded. Naturally it was important to do business. He pondered a little and reminded him, my benefactor, I guess the people who come will be intimidated. By that time, my benefactor will only use righteousness to question him. As a scholar, he will be willing to act as a running dog in the Yuan court and harm his hometown. The elders, the sins are serious, and the ancestors will not tolerate it. Zhu Kongba thought for a while, nodded vigorously, I see. He turned around and left Tanghe. Jiang Zimen also returned to the courtyard. If he guessed right, the war is about to come, and the leader of Yuanting is Jia Lu. This person is first-rate in water management, but he doesn't know how the battle is. Jiang Zimen is very curious and really wants to go. Take a look at Xuatang to see how capable the heroes of his who can be. It's a pity that he is not qualified yet, he can only count on Lao Zhu. I hope he can use his skills, just like Zhujiang scolded Wang Lang to death, let that Lu Anmin touch his nose. Jiang Zimen secretly looked forward to the fact that Xuatang at this moment is truly solemn and solemn. From Guo Zixing and below, the heads of the Huzhu Red Scarf are all there. Guo Zixing was not the one who captured Huzhu alone. He was accompanied by Sun Daya and others, a total of 5 marshals. And not long ago, Zhuzhou was breached and the leaders Haima Li died. Peng De and Zhao Jun ran to Huzhu with 2 generals and the remnants, relying on Guo Zixing. In other words, the little Huzhu has 7 marshals. And now they are facing Lu Anmin, the messenger sent by Jialu. Dashui Guo, and you guys, I won't say much about the battle in Zhuzhou. 100,000 army will be wiped out in a month, and nothing is left. The court is strong and unmatched. Why does Guo Dashui use a pebble to hit the stone? For the sake of prosperity and wealth. As long as the commander is attached to the court, not only the commander can be rewarded, but even the commander's subordinates can be promoted and made fortune, without the need for military trouble. Isn't this a good thing? Lu Anmin smiled implicitly and full of confidence. It is true that the Red Turban Army caught Yuanting by surprise in the early days, blossomed everywhere, and captured many cities. But when Yuanting concentrated his strength and began to counterattack, the situation of the Red Scarf Army became difficult in an instant. It's not surprising that no matter how rotten the Yuan court is, it is also a well-organized court from top to bottom. On the contrary, the Red Turban Army has its own governance, with mixed good and bad. Facing the counterattack, Zhuzhou's Haima Li, who had 100,000 soldiers, was killed. The mighty Nanyang Cloth King III lost. Even Lu Futong is under great pressure and can't take care of himself. At this time, Jia Lu sent people to persuade him to surrender, not only to hope that the Huzhu Red Scarf surrendered, but also to show its power and shake the military's spirit. After all, the Huzhu Red Scarf is not a monolithic one. As long as someone is moved, Jia Lu will win half. This alone makes people have to be amazed. Jia Lu's grasp of people's hearts is far better than Guo Zixing and other rash generations. At this moment, Dashui Guo calmed his face and said with a sneer, "You said it nicely, you didn't lie to us, you want to kill us in one fell swoop, these methods can't deceive people." Lu Anmin immediately said, "The commander Ming Jian, I am from Anfeng, who can be regarded as a fellow of the commander, how can he harm the commander?" Zhuzhou's Hizi Li lost, Nanyang Buwangsan also lost, and Fang Qiuchen from East Zhejiang was driven into the sea again, and Peng Yingyu also fought and went away, like a dog who lost her family. Now the court is dispatching troops and generals to destroy Lu Futong, and it is easy to think about it. Now that things are going to happen, the commander is still not awakened. Hey, is this handsome guy who is greedy for life and fear of death? Guo Zixing was furious. Lu Anmin smiled and said, the commander is naturally a hero, but he cherishes his hometown fathers and elders. Over the years, floods and droughts have been constant, the people have not had a livelihood, and the people have nowhere to live. In addition to the war and the soldiers, I don't know how many people are going to die. I really feel sorry for the fathers and elders in my hometown. The commander can live countless people with a single thought. When the time comes, the commander will become an official of the court. Guo Zixing frowned more tightly. Can this Lu Anmin really say that there is no one above Shuatang who is his opponent? He looked left and right, just in time to see his son-in-law Zhu Kongba. Kongba, what do you think of this? Zhu Kongba said with a cold face and disdain. In response to the commander, this person said that he felt sorry for the fathers and elders in his hometown, but he is the shame of his hometown when he is alive. It is so unfortunate that he gave birth to such a thing. Lu Anmin raised his brows, and then smiled again. Sure enough, it's a reckless theory. The official will not have the same knowledge as the people of the wild. You are uneducated, I am too lazy to take care of it. Zhu Zongbaxin said that we really couldn't make it in the first place, but now it's different. How could the little Mr. S class be in vain? We are wild savages, but we also know what a real scholar is. Zhu Kongba sneered at Lu Anmin and said, you must know Zheng Sixiao, right? Sure enough, Lu Anmin's face changed slightly when he heard the name, but Zhu Kongba caught him. Zheng Sixiao refused to be an official of the Yuan dynasty, painting orchids but not earth. Others asked him, he said that the land had been taken away. Don't you know? Only such a loyal and lofty person can be regarded as a scholar. You, and Jialu, be willing to be the running dog of Yuan Ting, and dare to come to the front of the rebel army, show off your power, flaunt your teeth and claws, you will lose the face of the old folks in your hometown. These few words scolded so happily, all the marshals present couldn't help laughing, and finally let out a sigh of relief. Lu Anmin never expected that this group of thieves could also tell the truth. He obviously broke the defense. The loyalty to the emperor. Zheng Sixiao is ignorant of the current affairs. The great Yuan has established a country for decades. He is superb and has returned to the world. The Song dynasty has long been dead. www.mtlnovel.com. You have rebelled against the court, and you are ruining yourself. Really? Yuan Ting opened the river to change banknotes. The Red Turban rebels in the world are more than 1 million. On both sides of the Yellow River, the rivers north and south are all rebels. However, after more than a year, Yuan Ting lost half of the country and dare to speak out? For the national luck, it's time for Yuan Ting to end his life. Zhu Kongba didn't go to class with Zhang Zimen in vain. He talked in one set of things, and he didn't say it clearly, and his momentum even suppressed Lu Anmin. He pressed the handle of the knife and forced it step by step. A running dog like you can't live as a human, and can't enter the ancestral grave after death. For generations, it will only be contemptuously scolded by the fathers and elders of the hometown. Zhu Kongba approached Lu Anmin, the two of them were no more than a foot apart, their eyes facing each other. Lu Anmin's heart panicked for no reason. He was furious, gnashing his teeth and cursing, you are the thieves. Only when the heavenly soldiers arrive, the jade and the stone will be burned. In order to regain the rivers and mountains of the Han family, take home the homeland, and die well. Zhu Kongba said calmly, it is you, although you are alive, you are no different from a pig and a dog. After you die, you will just give Lu Menjian and Fan Wenhu ass. The little devil behind. Let's now engrave your words and deeds on a stone tablet and send it to your hometown, standing beside your ancestor's grave, so that your ancestor will be ashamed for you. Even after thousands of years, your children and grandchildren will never be able to hold their heads up. Not an adult. Zhu Zongba said, winking at both sides, and someone immediately agreed to follow suit. You. Lu Anmin's old face was flushed, his anger attacked his heart, and it was not a misfortune for his children and grandchildren, and you were too vicious. Today's scholars have not cultivated a cheeky who ignores everything. If so, he might as well die. You are too vicious. In a hurry, Min took 2 steps backwards, sat on the ground with his ass, his forehead was covered in cold sweat. Min was dragged out of the handsome mansion. When he got outside, the people who didn't know where they came from, pointed and cursed. Among them, Feng ran over. I'll be this dog. A few years ago, he passed the Jinchi exam. At home, he was beautiful and beautiful. He set up an archway for him and ate the running water table for half a month. The imperial examination was suspended for a long time in the Yuan dynasty, and it was not resumed until the time of Yuan Renzong. Coincidentally, Zhang Ximen's uncle Zhang Yanghao was the examiner of the first subject. A total of 16 imperial examinations were held throughout the Yuan dynasty, and the number of admissions each time was very small. Therefore came out a Jinchi, which is indeed worthy of a big book. Hometown elders, and Yu Rongjian. But in a blink of an eye, the Yellow River was flooding and Anfeng was also hit by the disaster. Some people wanted to ask Liu Anmin to help his hometown and ask for tax exemptions. Unfortunately, Liu Anmin didn't dare to let go, just enjoy his Yanruyu, the golden house with peace of mind. You don't care about the life or death of the elders, and now you are a running dog for Yuan Ting. You beast! I don't know who grabbed a handful of rotten vegetable leaves and smashed them on Liu Anmin. This ignited emotions, and even the people in Huzhu city were angry. How could they know the virtue of the court? If this group is allowed to enter Huzhu, no one will survive. Dared to persuade him to surrender, and beat him to death. Instantly rotten vegetable leaves, clods, stinky shoes, eggs, everything greeted Liu Anmin. The Red Scarf sergeant who was responsible for dragging Liu Anmin were all affected. Guys, the 2 armies are at war, don't cut the army, the commander asked us to send him out. If you don't kill him, we don't want to kill him, can't we just sip him? When this dignified scholar quit Huzhu, his body was filthy, his head and face were broken. What made him even more frightened was his reputation throughout his life. He was completely ruined. At least in his hometown in Huaxi, no one would say him. That's good, it's really better to kill him. Is the opposite of Liu Anmin, Zhu Kongba has never been so beautiful in his life, even if he marries his wife and enters the bridal chamber, he can't compare it. A stinky monk who hadn't been to school for a few days, sat on the ground with a Jinchi background and scolded a civil official, sweating and discolored, just like a dog falling into the water. What else can I say, just 2 words, happy. Not only did he breathe out, Zhu Kongba took refuge in the Huzhu Red Scarf for less than a year, but because of his outstanding combat performance, he became a soldier of the commander and married his goddaughter. Yes. Naturally, there are a lot of messy arguments. Zhu Kongba's heart is strong enough to carry it down, but he also wants to prove himself. Refutes Liu Anmin, but it is not just a verbal advantage. Jia Liu sent someone over to divide the Huzhu Red Scarf, to undermine morale, and to seize the opportunity. Even if Guo Zixing and others will not surrender, if they deal with the left and the right, they will lose face and even gossip in the city will shake the military's mind. Who said that war must be met with swords and soldiers, and the exchanges of messengers, verbal and swordsmanship, are also confrontational battles? Zhu Kongba won a good start for Huzhu. Not only Guo Zixing was pleased to see this son-in-law, but other people also showed admiration, especially Peng De, who was pleasantly surprised. Good boy, have the courage. Don't look at us losing in Zhuzhou, this time in Huzhu, we have to win if we have tried our best. Even Guo Zixing looked at his son-in-law differently, and he even allowed Zhu Kongba to participate in the discussion. That is to say, a 9th chief in a district can express his opinions in front of several generals. This is a treatment that Guo Zixing's son Guo Tiangsu does not have. He Zhu Gongzi finally made his mark in the army and became a figure. Little sir, thanks to your teaching, we have to accept your love. Zhu Kongba came back in the evening with 2 silks and a small bag of golden beans. Although the Yuan dynasty mainly used paper money, there were still a lot of gold and silver jewelry from the wealthy. Besides, Peng De was a handsome man in the red scarf, and some gold and silver was reasonable. Otherwise, he gave Zhu Chongbei sacks of treasure money, that would be a big joke. Zhu Kongba was placed in front of Zhang Zimen, and said seriously, Peng De gave it to us, even if it is Shuxiu, let me accept it. Zhang Zimen looked at it and was very excited. After all, a normal person saw a packet of Huang Cheng Cheng, how can he calm down? However, Zhang Zimen has lofty ambitions, as the confidant of the future emperor, how can he be confused by a little gold? Benevolence rewards, the kid is naturally happy. But to achieve great things, you must distinguish between rewards and punishments. It is not good to be stingy with money, but it is not good to give generous rewards. Benevolence gives too much this time, it will make life proud and indulgent. Xin, overestimating his status. I thought that without me, I would not be able to do anything. If this continues, I don't know how many kilograms and how bold I am, and that is the right way to die. Zhu Kongba listened silently, seemingly touched, but in the end he still shook his hair and laughed. Little sir, you are teaching us how to be a handsome man. Zhang Zimen rolled his eyelids, isn't the pattern smaller? I teach you to be emperor. Zhu Kongba sighed, stretched out his hand to grab a dozen heavy golden beans, and stuffed them directly into Zhang Zimen's hands. Then, without waiting for him to refute, he directly asked, Mr. Zhang Zimen was slightly startled, thinking in his heart, and at the same time stuffed the golden beans in his sleeves. Ngong, the art of war says that you know yourself and the enemy in 100 battles, what do you think of this Jialu? After a pause, Zhu Zhong said, we are also a little bit confused. It stands to reason that the people hate Kaihe and change money. This Jialu is the one who presides over Xiuhe. We should hate him and wish to eat him. Meat. But we wondered again, wouldn't it be more sinful for the Yellow River to burst and not to repair the river? We heard that Jialu is still a man who understands river work and is a clean official. There are many things that he can't have the final say. Zhang Zimen nodded repeatedly, Ngong, Yuanting has long been decayed from top to bottom. At this time, whether you are right or wrong, as long as you do it, the good will become worse, and the bad will become worse. The dynasty is at the last juncture, most of the time. Zhu Zhong frowned and said slowly, Little sir, is Jia Lu a good official? But he does things for Yuanting and acts as Yuanting eagle dog. The more capable he is, the greater the harm. Zhang Zimen solemnly said, I heard that in order to repair the river, on both sides of the Yellow River, there are more than a dozen prefectures and government offices. 100,000, Jia Lu may not be very good at fighting, but he has the ability to deploy troops, build equipment and siege cities. Zhu Kongba thought about it seriously, and immediately nodded, yes, the little gentleman thinks highly, this Jialu is an arch-enemy. Little gentleman, the commander allows us to participate in the meeting of the handsome hall, what do you think we should do? Zhang Zimen said, Ngong, knowing the enemy is finished, we should say confidant. I have thought about some war cases, in fact, it is good for the defender. Tell me in detail. Zhu Kongba leaned forward, approached Zhang Zimen, earnestly asking for advice. www.mtlnovel.com. Let's not talk about it. During the period of the Three Kingdoms, Su Chao Sun Chuan besieged Hefei several times. Hefei city with no fewer than a few thousand people. There was also Zhang Xuan, who was in the Anxi rebellion, who stayed at Suiyang for 10 months and continued for 150 years of Tang Qiaozuo. During the Jingkong period, Taiyuan Wang Ziyai also blocked the Jinren West Road Army for more than 250 days. These are examples of battles involving thousands of people, tens of thousands, or even hundreds of thousands. As long as the scheduling is proper, the use of people is appropriate, and it is not difficult to defend the city. Zhu Kongba immediately asked, how to schedule? And how to use people? First of all, it is natural to have one heart and one mind. The iron barrels built in the city should be similar. Arrange people to patrol day and night, divide the area, and patrol in pieces. The people are not allowed to go in and out at will, and they are not allowed to pass on gossip and disturb the morale of the army. Yes, we must be severely punished. Jiang Zimen paused, then said, speaking of which, the most important thing to defend the city is food and ordnance. The food in the city must be controlled and a strict distribution system must be implemented, to ensure food for the soldiers. Let the people stutter, and we must take precautions against hoarding and driving up prices. In short, as long as you stabilize yourself, let alone Jia Lu, even if the Prime Minister comes with the soldiers, he may not be able to capture his Hu. Jiang Zimen said. Zhu Zongba nodded again and again. Little sir, every word is crucial, you are under our hands, really betrayed the talent. Jiang Zimen laughed and shook his head, my benefactor is wrong, he can say thousands of things, but there is nothing that can be done. The safety of his Hu depends on my benefactor. Zhu Kongba gradually clenched his fists. He remembered the tense scene of Xiao Shu he had seen on the market with Jiang Zimen, and couldn't help his scalp tingling. Little sir, let's go see the handsome now. Zhu Kongba turned around and left. Jiang Zimen had a hunch, fearing that someone would be unlucky. Facts have proved that Jiang Zimen's premonition still has a deviation, because it is not that some people are unlucky, but some people have their heads on the ground and their families are destroyed. Zhu Kongba went to the handsome mansion all night, discussing strategies to deal with the officers and soldiers. In the morning of the next day, Jiang Zimen was holding a copy of Mencius and reading it patiently. At this moment, Mu Ying ran in. The little guy blushed like an apple. He bumped in from the outside. Jiang Zimen couldn't help shaking his head. You stinky boy, you can't be more stable. If you have time to read more, don't run around all day long. It's a pity that Mu Ying couldn't do what Jiang Zimen wanted. Although he also knew that reading and literacy were important, he just couldn't sit still. On the contrary, it is the Godfather's knife and spear weapon. It is this kid's favorite. He is always groping and drooling. Zhu Kongba was afraid that he would hurt himself, so he got a wooden knife for Mu Ying. Given his virtue, the hope for the champion is not great. Big brother Jiang, brother Jiang! Mu Ying exclaimed, my godfather caught several grain merchants, and they were all tied to the street. I heard that he would be beheaded. Jiang Zimen was taken aback subconsciously. Is Lao Zhu so vigorous? After a pause, Jiang Zimen said to Mu Ying, you kid, stay home first, I'll go and see. I want to go too. Mu Ying didn't want to be bored at home. Why are you joining in the fun? Beheading, are you not afraid? Jiang Zimen wanted to scare Mu Ying, but he was wrong. Although Mu Ying was young, he had seen more killings than Jiang Zimen. There is no other way but to take a tail to the street. They hurried to the entrance of the street. At this time, many people in the city had gathered from all directions. They had 3 floors inside and 3 floors outside, surrounding the middle. The 2 Jiang Zimen were wrapped in the crowd, and only the back of the head of the person in front could be seen. At this moment, Zhu Kongba and Tang He were escorting several grain merchants. When they arrived at the street, a red-turbaned soldier borrowed a seat from the tea house and set up a temporary table. Zhu Kongba first came up. Old Zhu stood tall, Jiang Zimen could see him, but there were more and more people, but Zhu Kongba couldn't see Jiang Zimen. He had to deal with this matter himself. At the top of the grain merchants, he is an old man over 100 years old, with a grey beard, and wearing silk and satin. He looks like a decent rich man. Many people know him. His surname is Zhang. He is a well-known grain merchant in Huzhu. He has rich family wealth and is extraordinary. In the face of Zhu Kongba, the surnamed Zhang was not afraid of him. On the contrary, the old man gritted his teeth and suddenly sneered, "The old man knows who you are? Aren't you just the son-in-law of Dashui Guo? A few months ago, you got married, old man. I went to have a wedding wine." Zhu Kongba's face was sullen. He was still an unknown person at the time. Naturally, people looked at Guo Zixing and his wife's face. There were a lot of guests. He was not sure if there was one, and Zhu Kongba was too lazy. "Tube. There is no need to talk about it, let's ask you, why don't you want to sell it? Because you obviously have food. Also, you have tripled in a day, so can you let the people live?" Faced with the questioning, Jiang's expression changed, but he was still not afraid. "Master Zhu, the old man is a businessman. He buys low and sells high, and he earns this amount of money. I don't want to pay taxes. If you don't believe me, you can go ask Marshal Guo, ask Marshal Guo." This person repeatedly used Guo Zixing to suppress Zhu Kongba, and vowed to himself that it seemed to be really related to Guo Zixing. Tang He on the side frequently winked at Zhu Kongba, but he didn't know that Zhu Kongba remained unmoved. "We don't ask you this, just say the same, the enemy is now, you are hoarding and driving up food prices, making the people in the city panic. Could it be that you want to give his who to Yuan Danzi?" When asked by Zhu Kongba, the grain merchant surnamed Zhang was also taken aback. He could clearly feel that unkind eyes were cast from all directions. Since the news spread that the imperial court sent Jialo to attack his who, people in the city have been in panic, and food prices have changed 3 times a day. After Lu Anmin's arrival, the increase was the sharpest, and the people complained. Not to mention the fact that there is no war or not, food, 2 meals a day, eats 1 less meal and is panicked. It has always failed to defend the city, most of which are because there is not enough food to eat, and people are dead. "Old man, the old man and Yuan Ting are not of the same mind. How can they help them?" After thinking about it a little bit, the Zhang surnamed grain merchant understood Zhu Kongba's meaning. Beishi gave Grand Marshal Guo as a military ration, and asked young Master Zhu to transfer him to Marshal. 500 stones is not a small amount, but Zhu Kongba shook his head. "Then, that 800 stones? 1,000 stones is fine too." Zhu Kongba still shook his head. The grain merchant surnamed Zhang is also blinded. "What kind of variety is this? You catch the grain merchants and have such a big battle, don't you just want us to provide some grain? Okay, I'll give it to you. Even if you look at it for the sake of a handsome man, you should also hold your hands high and appreciate a way to survive. Master Zhu, don't be too greedy." Zhu Kongba smiled coldly, "We won't go around with you anymore. From now on, every grain store, how much grain it has in stock, and how much it sells every day, will be under our control." After Zhu Kongba finished speaking, he turned to look at all the people, and arched his hands at the big guy. "Fathers and folks, we know that the big guys are scared and worried that they didn't eat. We also know that it's not good to be hungry. Since childhood, we haven't eaten enough for a few days." Zhu Kongba's words caused a burst of laughter, and the people's eyes softened a lot when they saw him. Obviously, this is someone who knows the people's suffering. "We are thinking that every household will buy food once every 5 days, up to 10 caddies at a time. It may be a little bit less, but in this situation, you can't open your belly to eat, you have to reduce it. But the big guy can rest assured, all the food will be based on parity, and will not harm the folks." After Zhu Kongba finished speaking, the surrounding people began to calculate silently. Once 5 days, 10 caddies at a time, that is to say, you can have 2 caddies of grain a day. Calculated on average according to a family of 4, half a caddy per person a day. If you catch up with the busy farming hours, you will work all day, and you will not be able to feed half a caddy of food for a strong labor. There is no way. In an era when non-staple foods and fats are severely lacking, everyone is a dryer, and that's really edible. But then again, there is only half a caddy of food and you can't die from starvation, and there are young and old in a family, so you can average it. The most important thing is that the food is cheap. Can you expect more at this juncture? Zhu Gongzi, do you count? Someone asked courageously. Zhu Chong said loudly, at present, the army, civilians and people in the city are all a family. Even if there is only 1 grain of rice, they must be eaten separately. You can't starve to death. It's just that the soldiers have to fight and die. Empty. The stomach can't drive Yuan Danzi away. Think about it, folks, if Yuan soldiers come in, what will happen to this city of Huzhu? At that time, men, women, and children will either be killed, or robbed and insulted, and become slave animals, everyone. Are you willing? Facing Zhu Kongba's questioning, the people of Huzhu quickly understood. Okay, let's listen to Master Zhu. Master Zhu, you must defend Huzhu, don't let Yuan Guzi come in. With the support of the people, Zhu Kongba gained a little more confidence and turned to look at the grain merchant surnamed Zhang and 4 other grain merchants. The faces of these people changed and changed. They all understood what Lao Zhu meant. This guy is going to grab their food, and he still woke up. www.mtlnovel.com. What should I do? Those few people all looked at the food merchant surnamed Zhang, and said that your old man has the most confidence and his hands and eyes are open to the sky. Hurry up and say something for the big guy. The grain merchant surnamed Zhang gritted his teeth. Master Zhu, are you trying to take away the old man's property? No. Zhu Kongba said flatly, it's just a temporary loan. When Yuan Tanzi retires, the grain shop will return it to you, and the grain will be supplied to you. Ha ha ha. The grain merchant surnamed Zhang laughed suddenly. The old man is not a 3-year-old child. Zhu Kongba, the old man knows what you are. You are the young monk of Huangzhou Temple. Suddenly climbed to Gao Zhir, forgetting about it. I dare to bully the old man. I tell you, someone has already gone to see the man, and I lent him 100 carts of food back then. We are a deadly friendship, you can't take it away. He mentioned the young monk of Huangzhou Temple. Zhu Kongba raised his brows repeatedly, and finally suppressed it. You said that, you must be unwilling to cooperate. The grain merchant surnamed Zhang gritted his teeth and said, you are deceiving too much, the old man can't agree. Zhu Kongba asked again, food control is a military order. Military order? The old man is not in the army. Jiang's surnamed grain still needs to speak, but Zhu Kongba suddenly drew out his saber and said flatly, the military order must be obeyed by the whole city, and no one can be an exception. There is only one end to defying the military order, and that is death. While speaking, Zhu Kongba swung his knife abruptly, and a grey head fell on the ground. Zhang Zimen in the crowd was so frightened that he closed his eyes hurriedly, and blocked Mu Ying's eyes smoothly. The crowd was silent for a short time, and then thunderous applause erupted, and the cheers rose above the waves. Profiteers are damned. At this moment, Guo Zixing and his son Guo Tiangsu arrived. All they saw was a corpse, 3 feet bright red. Guo Zixing rushed to the spot and saw that the grain merchant surnamed Zhang had separated his body, and he was so scared that he was so frightened. He quickly used his hands and feet together, climbed up, and rushed to the front, regardless of blood stains, holding his grey head in his arms, loudly. Cry! He cried, but he surprised many people, including Zhang Zimen below. What happened? Is what the old grain merchant said true? Is his relationship with Guo Zixing really close? Zhang Zimen listened carefully, and sure enough, there are people in the crowd who know the details. Guo Zixing is from a strong background. He has known a grain merchant surnamed Zhang for more than 10 years, and he was once favored by others. Every New Year's Day, Guo Zixing would come to thank you, very respectful. Later, Guo Zixing contacted Sun Daya and others to rise up and conquer Huzhu. The grain merchant surnamed Zhang gave Guo Zixing 100 carts of grain, which helped Guo Zixing gain a foothold. It is reasonable to say that this person is Guo Zixing's great benefactor. Why didn't he find a position in the Red Scarf Army? It turns out that this grain merchant surnamed Zhang had a nephew who was an official in Yuanting. He also deliberately alienated Guo Zixing, but he did not abandon his family business. In short, he was so ambiguous. As a result, he got around and got Zhu Kongba arrested and beheaded in public. Things are getting bigger now. Guo Tianxu watched his father cry, and he jumped 3 feet high with anger. Zhu Kongba, how dare you kill anyone? Zhu Kongba's face was stern, and he said coldly, according to the military order, not just killing people. What military order? Why doesn't my father know? The commander asked us to requisition the city's grain and grass. We are naturally ordered to do something. Zhu Kongba responded to Guo Tianxu neither arrogantly nor arrogantly. Guo Tianxu was anxious, let you requisition grain and grass, not let you kill? You are bold. Zhu Kongba's face was dignified, and he still wanted to talk. Suddenly Guo Zixing got up from the stage with tears in his eyes and glared at Zhu Kongba. So courageous. Brother Zhang is a good friend of this handsome, he is kind to this handsome, who will give you the courage and dare to attack him. Guo Zixing scolded loudly. Zhu Kongba couldn't do the same as Guo Tianxu. He could only bend and say, if you return to the commander, this person is unwilling to cooperate with the military order. Food is related to the life and death of the people in the city. How can you allow Holet? He had to be headed by a humble job, if he is. The commander wants to blame, he is willing to accept the crime in his humble position. Talking, Zhu Zongba knelt down on both knees, waiting for the hair to fall. The several grain merchants who were escorted by Zhang surnamed grain merchants escaped from the dead, and all knelt down at this moment, crying bitterly. Marshal, Mr. Zhang was killed innocent, please be the master. They cried with their noses and tears. Guo Zixing saw in his eyes, he was furious, he also knew these few people, this Zhu Kongba had caused such a big disaster, what should he do? This commander asks you to collect military rations, you have to be kind, and talk about it, how can you kill people directly? It's really annoying to me. Zhu Kongba knelt and didn't speak, and he couldn't speak either. At this time, it's easy to talk and discuss, who will agree? Seeing Zhu Kongba not speaking, Guo Tianxu was overjoyed, thinking that he was speechless, and hurriedly said, Father, handsome, Zhu Kongba has killed the innocent indiscriminately. It has broken the hearts of the people in the city. It's time to kill. He can never forget about Ma's affairs, so how can such a beautiful woman like a flower and a jade be so cheap that Zhu Kongba is a reckless man? What a waste! Guo Zixing glared at Zhu Kongba. It was difficult to make a decision for a while, and the whole scene fell into a stalemate. Zhang Zimen saw it really in the crowd, and was anxious in his heart. In terms of Zhu Kongba's deeds, Zhang Zimen felt that there was no problem at all, and even cutting a few more heads was nothing. But Guo Zixing, like this, might really deal with Zhu Kongba. After thinking about it, Zhang Zimen suddenly fell to his knees, and said, Master Zhu has been wronged. His voice reminded the people present. That's right, at first everyone came to watch the excitement. They don't care who is dead or alive. But when Zhu Kongba proposed to give the big guys cheap food, the people were moved and thought that this was a good person. When Zhu Zhong smashed the grain merchant surnamed Zhang with 8 hands, the people admired it even more and felt that this was a big deal and it was courageous. A profiteer, he deserves it. Now it is discovered that the commander is going to punish this person, what is this? Reverse black and white? The people quit. Yes, Lord Zhu was wronged. What's wrong with killing a profiteer? Zhu Gongzi has done nothing. The boss can't wrong the good guys. Among the crowd, there were shouts one after another, and more people knelt down to intercede for Zhu Kongba. Zhang Zimen naturally wouldn't be idle, he kept his head down and kept shouting. Kill well, people will be happy. Master Zhu is doing well. Thousands of people, overwhelmed by a large number of people, unanimously voiced injustices for Zhu Kongba. Standing on the stage, the Guo family father and son, as well as those grain merchants, had a horrible feeling. How long has this surnamed Zhu have such great prestige? Father handsome, Zhu Kongba is holding Diao Min, he is plotting wrong. Guo Tianxu leaned in Guo Zixing's ear and continued to attack Zhu Kongba. Guo Zixing's face was gloomy, very ugly. After a long time, he slowly said, "Go to Jiang's house and bury the person first." Guo Tianxu hesitated a little, but he could only nod his head to agree, greeted the staff, held his head, and carried the corpse down. Guo Zixing turned to Zhu Kongba again, "You act boldly, go back and think behind closed doors." After Guo Zixing finished speaking, he turned around and returned to the handsome mansion. Zhu Kongba had no choice but to return to the courtyard. At this moment, Maz also got the news. Seeing her husband's depression, Maz was also indignant. "Kongba, I will go to see God Niang and ask her to ask the marshal, why is it good for marshal and for his who, that's the end." The goddess in Ma's mouth is Guo Zixing's wife Zhang. Although a woman has a boudoir name, outsiders rarely know it. After marrying, the husband's surname, plus his own surname, followed by a surname, is even formal called. For example, the Zhu Ma clan and Guo Zhang clan, in the official history, there is no record of the name of the Queen Ma. Ma Xiuying is a folklore, originally derived from the stage. The same goes for Sun Quan's sister, Sun Shangxiang, who also came here. There is something more interesting. Diao Chan reported himself on the stage, saying that the slave family's surname was Diao's name, the name of the servant maid. Listen, is this still a personal name? Seeing his wife fight the injustice for him, Zhu Zongba was moved in his heart, but he was unwilling to make trouble. "Sister, don't worry, the boss just told us to think behind closed doors. It just so happens that we go to study and stay quiet," Zhu Kongba said, suddenly remembering. "By the way, why didn't you see the little mister?" Ma was also taken aback. "Yes, where did Zhang Zimen go? I guess he went out on the street 80% of the time. With his cleverness, he won't suffer." After thinking about it, Zhu Kongba simply went to the east wing, where it was the study room that Zhang Zimen had arranged. After Lao Zhu came over, he first flipped through the book, still feeling irritable, and by lifting the pen again, he wrote for a while. "Don't tell me," gradually, my heart calmed down. Was full of 8 sheets of paper, and Zhu Kongba put down the brush in his hand, stretched out, and turned his head to see that Zhang Zimen was standing at the door. "Yun Gong is really a good self-cultivation, so I admire him." Zhang Zimen smiled and praised, "Is this the legendary humiliation?" Lao Zhu's face flushed, he paused and then said, "Little sir, there are some things we can only tell you. Last night, the commander actually told us, let us rectify a few, don't be soft. No see. The blood group will not be afraid." Zhang Zimen raised his brows, but he was not so surprised, even a little bit as expected. Lao Zhu is ruthless, but the current Lao Zhu is just the 9 husband under Guo Zixing. www.mtlnovel.com. Without the above authorization, would he dare to kill a wealthy businessman with great influence on the street? That's not called killing the fruit Jew, it's called knowing how to live and die. Only Guo Zixing instructed him, and he followed the order, which made sense and reasonable. It's just that since Guo Zixing asked Zhu Kongba to do it, why did he cry again and punish him? "Little sir, is it possible that we would be wrong?" Zhang Zimen shook his head slightly, he probably guessed what Guo Zixing was thinking. The commander is a local tycoon in Who's Who. He has inextricably linked with these people. He wants to start, but he can't be criticized. He had to come so late. Zhu Kongba heard a lot of things in Zhang Zimen, and soon figured it out. Guo Zixing played a trick to let him offend people, and then he hides behind the scenes and pretends to be good. Is it wrong? Subordinates are not just taking care of others. This is a matter of reason. But Zhu Kongba is a bit aggrieved. You can tell us clearly, can we refuse to play a play with you? It will only work harder, but what is it like now? Are we a monkey in your hand, Mr. Guo? Ngong, are you dissatisfied in your heart? Zhang Zimen asked. Zhu Kongba was silent, and Zhang Zimen smiled again. Ngong, the kid was just in the crowd. Seeing that the big guys were embarrassing for Ngong, he made his own advocate, do something. Zhu Zhong was surprised, little sir, what are you doing? Zhang Zimen smiled, I didn't do anything, just spent the golden beans, which was rewarded by grace. At this time, the city should be extolling Master Zhu's reputation as an iron fist for eliminating profiteers. Zhu Kongba was stunned for a moment. This is to suppress Guo Zixing through public opinion. Can it work? Zhu Kongba felt a little hesitant in his heart. He felt that directly provoking Guo Zixing to be unwise and stroking the tiger's whiskers would have consequences. But I feel that my heart is not at peace, so I can vent my breath. Noting Zhu Kongba's hesitation, Zhang Zimen gave a chuckle in his heart. It was broken, and he was good at making opinions. If you want to be a good secretary, you have to understand where the boundaries are, and take the initiative for the boss. Even if it makes sense, are you the boss, or am I the boss? Putting it on the emperor, things are even worse. That's how Hu Weiyang died. Although Lao Zhu hasn't really started his own business yet, it is still necessary to guard against mischief. Gong, the kid also feels that it is a rare opportunity to strike while the iron is hot. Therefore, I have the courage to arrange it. As for the things that the Gong is worried about, the kid thinks that maybe it won't happen. Zhu Zongba was startled, and then said, do you know what we are worried about? He leaned forward and stared at Zhang Zimen, very curious. Zhang Zimen was not afraid, but met his gaze and said seriously, Benevolence is worried that the handsome is annoyed, and the kid thinks it is unnecessary. Zhu Kongba knew Zhang Zimen was keen, and he didn't need to lie to this kid. Tell me, why not use it? Yet. Zhang Zimen nodded and said, Benevolence, knowing people and discussing things. The handsome man is 50 years old this year. He is also a powerful landlord in Huzhu. He has a lot of wealth. The past days were pretty good. Zhu Zongba nodded and smiled, little sir, this is something everyone knows, do you have any ideas? Zhang Zimen smiled, to put it bluntly, isn't Guo Zixing the landlord of Huzhu? Is it hard to guess what this kind of person thinks? Of course, Zhang Zimen can't draw a conclusion directly, he still has to throw the pot to the dead father. I'm sorry. Ngong, my father once wrote an article summarizing the history of the founding monarchs. Qin Shi Huang inherited the inheritance of the ancestors' foundations. Chu and Han quarreled, to put it bluntly, the three robbers and the descendants of the nobles of the 6 countries were fighting, and the last was the humble ancestor of Han. Liu Bang won the world, although Lu Xiu, Emperor Guanggu of the Han Dynasty, was a descendant of the clan, he was no different from a commoner in his generation. Counting further down, the founders of the Sui and Tang dynasties were all family members. Song Taizhi Zhao Kuangyan was barely considered a martial artist. Well, Yuan Ting is a foreigner. Zhang Zimen smiled and said, what kind of taste did you taste? Zhu Zongba thought for a while, and then slowly said, the little gentleman wants to talk about the powerful landlord, it's hard to get things done. Zhang Zimen nodded and gave Lao Zhu a thumbs up. Ngong, take this red scarf uprising as an example. Lu Futong was born from a humble background and raised the uprising flag first. The rest of Zhaima Li, Wang San, Meng Haima, etc., are all poor people. Only Marshal Guo, he is better than others. It was a few months late to start things, and after occupying Huzhu, he was hesitant to move forward. The knowledge in this is not small. Zhu Zongba thought for a moment, seeming to realize something, and hurriedly asked, Sir, tell me. Zhang Zimen said, the reason is simple. The handsome man can live on his life. He never thought that he would die and break the net. I saw the Red Scarf Army's fierce momentum and had a chance. He took advantage of the emptiness and took advantage of his who. When the Red Scarf encountered a problem, the general also knew that the leader of the party was not so good, so he wanted to guard his who and didn't want to make progress. The powerful landlords and the bourgeoisie still have some similarities. They are both decent people who have nothing to worry about. They have the ambition to gain more power, but let them change the day, break an old world, and rebuild. New universe. Sorry, they don't have the guts. This situation may be called the weakness of the property-owning class. So in the past dynasty changes, the powerful landlords were very important forces, but almost no founding group of any dynasty belonged to this group of people. But there seems to be an exception, that is, the Sima family of the Western Jin dynasty. Not to mention it. Zhu Kongba thought seriously. He knew Guo Zixing better than Zhang Zimen, and he thought about it along the lines of thought, which is really the case. Of course, when Guo Zixing had courtesy and virtuous corporal, he was nonsense, otherwise how could he marry his adopted daughter to Zhu Kongba? But in many cases, Guo Zixing doesn't like to deal with the soldiers, there is always a sense of alienation. So that Sun Dea and others were able to invade Guo Zixing's power, relying on the support of the soldiers, to challenge the authority of the commander. Sir, do you think that Marshal Guo can't get things done? Let's do it alone. Zhu Kongba shook his head directly, we can't agree, Marshal Guo is kind to us. At this juncture, the officers and soldiers suppressed the situation. If we ran away, wouldn't we be deserters? No matter what. Zhang Zimen was not surprised. He smiled and said, and Gong is right. Now it is indeed not the time to leave Dashui Guo. On the contrary, he needs to use all his skills to help Dashui Guo keep his who. Only by repaying Dashui Guo can he conspiracy. Next step. What he said categorically made Zhu Kongba hesitate instead of persuading himself to go. Then what's going on? Gong, we just talked about the character of Dashui Guo. This time we are dealing with the food problem, and we can see it. Since we are the leader of one party, we should stand up and deal with the grain merchants, gather the hearts of the people, and defend the city against the enemy. This is what a hero should do. But the boss dare not offend the wealthy businessmen in the city. He always wants to kill people with a knife, without guilty. His character, I am afraid that even his who will not be able to keep it in the future. Zhang Zimen is really not nonsense. Looking at the historical data, if it weren't for a son-in-law like Zhu Yuanzhang, Guo Zixing would only be listed as other in the history annals. It is completely incomparable with Lu Futong, Su Shaohui, and others. My benefactor, you are the most correct to assist the general and protect his who. Now you still need to accumulate talents and wait for the opportunity. But if it is for this reason, you will be loyal and filial, and be honest. A handsome pawn. I am really worried that one day, the general will abandon you. Besides, if you don't have any opinions, how can you stand on your own and accomplish great things in the future? Zhang Zimen's words were in Zhu Kongba's heart. He was in a bad situation under Guo Zixing. The biggest problem was Guo Tiangsu. This young marshal didn't know what medicine he had taken wrong, but he just didn't like it. Zhu Kongba is embarrassed everywhere. In Huzhu City, these big-time men are also in intrigue with each other, and they don't seem to be doing big things at all. Going out alone is the best way out, but the time is not ripe yet. Zhang Zimen perfectly captured Zhu Kongba's heart. Little sir, I understand what you mean. You mean that we are doing things for the handsome, and naturally we have to do our best. But we can't be a fool, let the handsome know our weight. Zhang Zimen smiled and said, benevolence has a high opinion, and he has all the scheming methods, but he is not the hero who kills the fruit. He blindly obedient does not necessarily have any benefits. Appropriately show the strong head, just to make the general awe 3 points. In terms of arguing, you must fight for what should be argued, and don't bear the anger that should be vented. Zhu Kongba couldn't help but cheer up. He quickly understood what Zhang Zimen meant, just like he was in Huangzhou Temple, blindly working honestly. Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com can't change the pity above, just think you are bullying, and everyone will play with you. This time Guo Zixing rewarded and punished him unfairly, and treated him as a swordsman, so he would simply show his strength and show Guo Zixing. Want to come at this critical juncture, Guo Zixing can't break his arms. Zhu Kongba figured it out. Little sir, let's ask again, do you think the handsome man will bow his head? Yes. Soon. To deal with Jia Lu and defend his Hu, you must be kind to you, Marshal Guo will definitely come and invite you. Zhu Kongba again said, then what should we do? Naturally I agreed, and I am very happy and grateful. Zhu Kongba shook his head, we are asking what do you want to do next? Do you need to converge? Convergence? Why converge? My benefactor should be more decisive, and go ahead. The military and people's hearts of this city of his who are between the benevolence thoughts. If you are only committed and follow the rules, those who have just had expectations for my benefactor. The people, shouldn't they be disappointed? Lao Zhu's heart rejuvenated again. He weighed and fully understood Zhang Zimen's thinking. This kid had seen through Guo Zixing and knew that the enemy is now in urgent need of hope, so he allowed himself to stand up and shoulder the burden. Really amazing. Mister, is this all written by my father? Lao Zhu suddenly asked. Zhang Zimen was startled, almost lost his attitude, and hurriedly said, the kid is just trying to figure it out based on the article, he may not be right. Zhu Kongba just laughed and said nothing. At this moment, suddenly there was a noise outside the courtyard, and Guo Zixing came with a few guards in person. Zhu Kongba was shocked, and only said one sentence, the little man knows everything like a god. Turning around, Zhu Kongba hurried out. Zhu Kongba was very obedient. After giving a gift to Guo Zixing, he honestly followed the arrangement of the city defenses with his father-in-law, as if there was no such thing as a grain merchant surnamed Zhang. Zhu Kongba went very anxiously, and there were many things too late to explain to Zhang Zimen. It happened that Zhang Zimen had no sources of information in the army. Seeing that he was unable to do anything, Ma made the move. Su is the one who has big feet, walks fast, and is well informed. It took less than an hour to figure out the outside affairs and come back to discuss with Zhang Zimen. Little sir, this time there are hundreds of thousands of soldiers, more than twice as much as the previous news. So much? Zhang Zimen was shocked and asked quickly. Ma did not reserve and told what he knew. It is now at the end of the 12th year of Yuan Zichun. It has been a year and a half since the Lu Futong uprising. At the beginning, the momentum was like a rainbow, and the city was conquered, and it blossomed everywhere. But as Yuanting reacted, a fierce counterattack came. As mentioned earlier, the third king of Baijuo Red Scarf was killed, and Nanchuo Red Scarf also fell into a bitter battle. The worst of them is the Sesame Li who occupies Zhuzhou. Was called Sesame Li because in the disaster year, he took out the sesame seeds from a warehouse at home to help the victims. Therefore, its reputation spread and gained the support of the people. Zhaima Li was responding to Lu Futong's actions, but he never expected that the court would send heavy soldiers. Lu Futong was not big, so he beat him Zhi Li first. What's more terrible was that the leader was actually a prime minister. Sesame Li defended for more than a month, but he was smashed into the city, his head was chopped off, and his family died. Only Peng De, Zhao Juniang and others took the remnants and ran to Huzhu to seek refuge in Guo Zixing. To death, Sesame Li is a fool. He doesn't understand, it doesn't mean that others don't understand either. taking the honor of the Prime Minister and leading hundreds of thousands of people to fight against Zhuzhou. The reason is also very simple. This place is the key point of the canal. The disasters in the north and the Yellow River burst. The Yuan dynasty pointed to the food supply in the south and cut off the sesame plum canal. Yuan Ting doesn't fight him hard yet. Tuochuo succeeded in the first battle, and most of the emperors were very satisfied. Not only did they give Tuochuo the title of Taishi, they also set up a shrine to build a shrine in Zhuzhou to commend Tuochuo's achievements. If the devolatilizer at this moment is going south, Zhuzhou has almost no capital to resist, and if he continues to go south, Tianwan Emperor Su Shaohui will also be at risk. Most of them made an order to recall Tuochuo to the capital. At this time, the emperor of the Yuan dynasty still didn't understand what it meant. Soon, he would do it again in Jiayu city, and the consequences of that time were not something the Yuan dynasty could bear. Although he returned to the capital, the work of suppressing bandits continues. Someone besieged Lu Futong, and someone saw Su Shaohui and played happily. Zhuzhou, a group of not so large red scarf soldiers, Yuan Ting sent 2 ministers, one Han and one Mongolian, namely Jia Lu and Uge Chaer. It is generally believed that the Han-Mongolian discord is different from fighting each other openly and secretly. Jia Lu is a man of water control, and he is highly respected, and he can suppress Uge Chaer. They worked out a relatively safe entry plan. First, the army headed south from Zhuzhou, passed through Suzhou, and drove straight to Zhuzhou. Along the way, Jialu recruited and accepted rebels, and treated the bandits everywhere, and took measures to pacify them. As long as he submits to the court, he will not be blamed. In this way, Jia Lu gathered tens of thousands of soldiers, which doubled his strength. 10 to encircle, and 5 to attack. Jia Lu knows very well that without sufficient troops, it is impossible to take down Zhuzhou. In addition to the inclusion of bandits and pirates, Jialu also ordered to severely reprimand Shiri Bohua, and at the same time asked him to lead his troops to respond, besiege Zhuzhou together, and make meritorious deeds. This Shiri Bohua was the first to wipe out Guo Zixing. It's just that he was courageous and didn't dare to attack Zhuzhou city directly. Of course, it is false to say that Cheli did not spend no credit. His men and horses burned Huangzhou Temple by accident, so that Zhu Kongba lost his last foothold and had to go to Zhuzhou and became a red man. A member of the Tao. From a certain point of view, Cheribohua is the wrong person in the Yuan dynasty. According to the latest news, Jialu has 50,000 soldiers and horses, and Uege Chaer has 10,000 Mongolian fine horses. They also gathered no less than 50,000 people. Adding to the 30,000 people who don't spend it, the total number of enemy soldiers exceeds 100,000. When Ma said this, his face was pale and his eyelids couldn't help but beat. Even Zhang Ziman accelerated his heartbeat, cold all over. It is said that there are tens of thousands of people, boundless, and tens of thousands of people are pressed over, like mountains and seas. How can it be idle? And Jia Lu is not an ordinary civil servant. He can mobilize hundreds of thousands of people, and he can mobilize the same people to attack Zhuzhou in an orderly manner. Although leading soldiers and controlling rivers are not the same, they cannot underestimate Jialu's ability. Zhang Ziman thought again and again, feeling at a loss. Madam, right now the benefactor is with the marshal, can the madam lead the kid around the city wall to see if there is any way? Ma immediately agreed. She knew Zhang Ziman's ability very well, and even he was devoted to planning for her family, not an outsider. Ma Clan prepared a battle jacket for Zhang Ziman and took him to Zhuzhou city. Zhang Ziman stepped on the top of the city, looked inside and out, and suddenly his scalp became numb. I really don't know. Guo Zixing has occupied Zhuzhou for more than half a year. What is he doing? As we all know, isolated cities are difficult to defend. It is best to occupy the surrounding cities and cooperate with each other. Even if they cannot be defeated, they should build some fortresses outside the city to serve as horns for each other. It's a pity that Guo Zixing didn't do these two things. It's not easy to build a castle, and it may be excusable, but why didn't even the moat be cleared? Huzhu is close to the Huai River. Since the Yellow River burst, the entire Zhonghuai area has become a flooded area with severe floods, siltation of the river, and a lot of sediment. Huzhu's moat was originally more than 1 foot deep, but at this moment, due to siltation, some places have been leveled. Not to mention, Huzhu city has not been heightened and reinforced, nor has it been repaired, nor has it been digging a trench. It is completely a posture of lying flat and being beaten. Zhang Ziman is stupid. He really does not know the history of Huzhu. How did you hold it? Is it Jia Lutai's waste, or Zhu Kongba's luck, really has the protection of dragon energy? Zhang Ziman's scalp was numb. Ma Shi saw Zhang Ziman's worries, and tried to ask, is the young gentleman aware of the ill? What can Zhang Ziman say is more than a malady, it's utterly ill. Madam, is it possible that no one suggested strengthening the city in the past? Ma said, some people have said that, but some people think that strengthening the city is too exhausting. The Yuanting is because Zaihui changes the banknotes and destroys people's hearts. The rebels will no longer enslave the people. www.mtlnovel.com. Zhang Ziman is shocked. What kind of truth is this? Madam, there are tens of thousands of soldiers in the city, can't you let them repair the city? Ma's breath slightly, just whispered, there were originally 5 great marshals in the city, but now there are 2 more. The common people often say that there are more dragons and they can't control the water. Zhang Ziman was really stupid, and he shrugged off the pot. This is understandable, but because of this, he gave up the city defense and waited for the soldiers to come. This is what Zhang Ziman couldn't understand. Seriously, this is war. Mister, what do you think? Ma knew that his life was at stake, so he couldn't wait to say, you have a good way to tell me, I'll go to the godmother. Ma's confidence is very high. She knows that although her godfather Guo Zixing is over 100 years old, the pillow breeze still works. Zhang Ziman took a serious look at the situation inside and outside the city, and after thinking about it for a while, he could only say, Madam, the moat needs to be cleaned up. It should be an emergency to build an 8-foot sheep horse wall. It's just a temporary construction, I'm afraid it won't stop. Living in Jialu, I can only make a fuss in the city. In the city? Yet. Zhang Ziman pointed his finger, these houses close to the city wall must be demolished. The distance of 30 feet must be cleared. There must be no shortage of return artillery in Jialu's army. There is no shortage of firearms in Jialu's army. Lu would definitely dig tunnels into the city, dig a trench against the inside of the city wall, and then build a low wall, behind the low wall, and dig trenches. Layers of defense, no matter how many soldiers and horses Jia Lu has, he will die in Huzhu down the city. Zhang Ziman gritted his teeth and gritted his teeth. He has long been not an outsider who has opened up the perspective of God, but a person who has witnessed the blood feud of his parents. In any case, he must defeat the Yuan army. Markov thought secretly, then nodded vigorously, Little sir, I see.